Chapter 6:29. However, the old man was proud and aloof. Moreover, he had made too many enemies. It was fine in Taoist state. As for this continent, just the sects that Feng Yu knew had been messed up by the old man. Therefore, in this generation, almost no one was willing to ally with the Heavenly Secrets Court. No one was willing to be with someone like the old man. After all, in their eyes, the old man's personality was too strange. While they were afraid of him, they couldn't help but hate him. However, due to the rules set at the sect meeting, no one dared to find trouble with the Heavenly Secrets Court. Of course, with their strength, they were not qualified to find trouble with the Heavenly Secrets Court. However, the old man was different. He had never formed an alliance with others, so he did things according to his personality. On this continent, there were almost no sects that could control him. As for the sects in the ethereal state, they were too far away. Moreover, the old man didn't do things ruthlessly. Basically, he would let it go after venting his anger. Therefore, the various sect alliances and the leaders of the sect alliances in Taoist state turned a blind eye to this kind of thing and couldn't be bothered. As for the sects in the western wilderness, previously, they would occasionally attend the sect meeting. After all, they were just putting on an act. However, in the past 10 years, the Fire Cloud Hall had become the leader and established the sect alliance. Apart from the Tianli sect, the Heavenly Thunder sect, and a few other sects that had a grudge with them, the Fire Cloud Hall had joined forces with almost all the remaining sections. Moreover, they had become the leader of this alliance. Not only that, with the Fire Cloud Hall's appearance, they had also roped in many northern forces. From the looks of it, he had the intention to go against Bian Lianzhou. The old man didn't care about this and even clapped his hands in approval. After all, they were undoubtedly courting death by doing so. The sect meeting was held once every 5 years. By the time Feng Yu attended, it had been held more than 100 times. This time, it was held by the previous leader of the sect alliance. The location was in the central city of the ethereal state. It was also the most prosperous city among the more than 20 cities in the ethereal city, distant Star City. According to the old man, there were many sects participating in the sect meeting this time. Just the continent they were on, including the Sword sect and Qi sect. There were already more than 40 sections. As for the ethereal state, there were more than 100 of them. This was also the first time in history that the number of sects participating in the sect assembly was the highest. In the past, many sects would choose not to join in the fun. The reason why all of them had gathered together this time was because in recent years, the strength of the northern forces had increased explosively. There were also many sects there. Moreover, their average strength surpassed the sects of this generation in Taowu state. This was not the most important thing. Most importantly, the alliance leader of that sect was very ambitious. Unwilling to settle for a small state like Shire, they had long coveted Upper Taoist state. Over the past 2 years, many experts had arrived in the ethereal state one after another, sweeping away many small sections. At this rate, it wouldn't take more than a few years for the Shire experts to sweep through the entire Taoist state. At that time, the various sects would definitely be plunged into misery and suffering. In order to seek stability, they had no choice but to participate in this sect meeting. The first reason was to seek an alliance. Secondly, they could hug each other for warmth. Although the major sects in Liuzhou usually fought with each other non-stop against external enemies, they were still considered the same. After all, they were all in the same boat. Most of them understood the principle of being intimately interdependent. As for the old man, he was the one who had been absent from several sect meetings. This time, he wasn't looking for an alliance. He just wanted to see if the sects in the alliance had the strength to fight against the experts in the Shire state in the north. With Xian Jizi and the others, the journey didn't seem so leisurely. Xian Jizi and the old man chatted about everything. Xian Jizi's disciples were also talking about their own things. They were very excited about this trip to the ethereal state. They were all from the same sect and were very familiar with each other. For a moment, Fang Yu was still sitting alone and couldn't talk at all. In fact, it wasn't because they weren't familiar with Fang Yu. It was because Xian Jizi's expression just now made them a little jealous. After all, Xian Jizi hadn't taken in a personal disciple in all these years. Judging from his words, he really wanted to take in Fang Yu. If it weren't for the old man's refusal, Fang Yu might have been Xian Jizi's personal disciple by now. It was impossible to say that they weren't jealous. The spirit beast continued to fly. With nothing to do, Fang Yu continued to study the crystal store. In this crystal store, almost all the large and small items had been rummaged through by Fang Yu. The temptation inside was too strong. In the end, Fang Yu didn't dare to look. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold back and squander all the crystals. However, after rummaging through the crystal store, Fang Yu still found a detail. The upper grade in this crystal store wasn't completely fixed. In other words, the goods in the crystal store were divided into batches. In each batch there were some fixed goods. After a period of time, these goods would be randomly refreshed. The refreshed goods were rarely repeated. However, their grades were all very high and could be considered rare treasures. Only the cultivation base was fixed and would never be refreshed. However, the price was fixed as well. Not a single crystal less would be accepted. There was still a long time before the next refresh of the crystal store. Although he didn't know if the next refresh would cause him to lose the things he had taken a fancy to. But he wasn't worried, because he had enough confidence that he could gather the number of crystals before the next refresh of the crystal store. After another 2 days of flying, under his feet, there was no longer a desolate area. Gradually, they could vaguely make out the sparse buildings. These buildings were different from the buildings of the Tianji courtyard and the various sections. They used a special architectural method in the Taowu state. The courtyards were connected and there were no tall buildings. However, relatively speaking, the space was much larger. Fang Yu secretly estimated. It had been almost 10 days since the spirit beast set off from the Tianji courtyard. The spirit beast's flying speed of 100 miles in the blink of an eye should have flown millions of miles in more than 10 days. It seemed that the Taowu state was still quite far from the continent where Fang Yu was. It was no wonder that the sect assembly of the Misty State would only be held once every 5 years. Just the round trip alone would take a month. Moreover, there were many sects in the desert, so they would have to spend even more time. An hour later, the spirit beast's flying speed had begun to slow down. Under his feet, the clouds were pushed aside, and a cluster of buildings appeared. These buildings were very unique. Looking down, they were quite orderly. Chapter 630. This must be the richest and most majestic city in Taowu State, Distant Star City. Looking at the whole city, it was magnificent, had extraordinary buildings, and was bustling with people. The Distant Star City was simply too big. Even though he was in the air, he could only see a small corner of the Distant Star City. In Fang Yu's eyes, this 1.5 stars was already extremely rich. There were all kinds of buildings, all kinds of high-end restaurants, and the clothes of the local people, as well as their strength. In general, they were very strong, many times stronger than the generation of the Heaven Chance Institute. However, the old man told Fang Yu, this was just the most inconspicuous and backward neighborhood in Distant Star City. The real rich neighborhood was still half a day's journey away. The reason why they chose to land here was that the wine in the flagon was almost empty. Fang Yu was a little speechless. He followed the old man to eat and drink in the city. After spending a total of 5 crystals, the old man was finally satisfied. After continuing their journey, Fang Yu felt a pang of heartache. This old man had almost used up all the 20 crystals he had snatched from the nibbling competition. It was not because of heartache, but because he felt helpless. He tried his best to snatch others' crystals, but the old man tried his best to snatch his crystals. After another half a day's journey, there were already dark buildings under their feet. Compared to the neighborhood they landed in earlier, this place was indeed much more prosperous and spectacular. However, Feng Yu was not in the mood to have a good time now. After the spirit beast landed, a few young people came up to greet them. After confirming the old man's identity, they settled Feng Yu and the others in a tavern in the center of the neighborhood. This tavern had already been taken down. The dozens of rooms on the upper floor were already occupied by the people from the various sects who had come this time. Behind the tavern, there was a courtyard with many mountains. The environment there was very beautiful and quiet. Xian Jizi and his disciples did not stand on ceremony. They found a few rooms and stayed there. However, the old man was not so easy to talk to. No matter what, he had to choose the rooms outside. It's not good to be too quiet. I like to be lively. The old man found a good excuse. In fact, Feng Yu knew in his heart that living here was just more convenient for drinking. After finally settling down, the old man pointed out a path for Feng Yu. In the most prosperous district of the city, there was a heavenly Inquisition pavilion. There, they had all the information, big and small, in the region of Ruajo. The shopkeeper of the Heaven-Seek Pavilion was a marshal honorable. No one had seen his true face all these years. The person in charge of the Heaven-Seeking Pavilion was an old man at the peak of the martial emperor realm. As long as they were within 10,000 miles of this Taowu province, Heaven-Seek Pavilion would be able to get some information about everyone and everything. However, their fees were rather high. Feng Yu was already mentally prepared. After all, it was worth it to spend these crystals. As long as he could find the Pill Saint, he would naturally be able to earn back these crystals. On the way, Feng Yu found a local to ask if the Heaven-Seek Pavilion was reliable. Unexpectedly, that person looked at Feng Yu with an extremely strange gaze and said, "Even if you doubt yourself, you don't have to doubt the Heaven-Seek Pavilion." Later, a local explained to Feng Yu. It turned out that the Heaven-Seek Pavilion was not omnipotent. Although it was not omnipotent, the Heaven-Seek Pavilion had the answer to almost everything they wanted to know. The reason why they had so much information was not because they had grasped some heavenly secret. Instead, they used the simplest and most crude method: placing spies. In the entire Taowu province, just the distant Star City alone had tens of thousands of spies of the Heaven-Seek Pavilion. Almost all of these spies had been professionally trained. As long as they found valuable information and reported it to the Heaven-Seek Pavilion, they would be rewarded with several crystals. Not only that, if the locals had any important information, they could also report it to the Heaven-Seek Pavilion. Once they verified it, they would be heavily rewarded. As the saying goes, there will be brave men under the heavy reward. Therefore, no matter what the news was, their Heaven-Seek Pavilion would be able to receive one or two. Some people had even specialized in this line of work, collecting all kinds of useful information and selling it to the Heaven-Seek Pavilion. It could be as big as a duel between powerful experts, or as small as a trifle. Even if someone entered a widow's door, who stole someone else's wife, this kind of thing would be accepted by the Heaven-Seek Pavilion. Therefore, this was also the reason why the Heaven-Seek Pavilion charged a high price. After all, the source of the information cost a lot. Originally, Feng Yu still doubted the authenticity and reliability of the Heaven-Seek Pavilion's source of information. But after listening to the local's explanation, he immediately dispelled his doubts. The Heaven-Seek Pavilion was not purely a place of greed. After doing business for so many years, they had been very honest. They would have specialized people in charge of verifying all the information. If the information was true, there would be a heavy reward. But if the information was false, then the person who provided the false information would directly lose his life. In this way, although the cost was a bit high, but the source of the information was absolutely reliable. The reason why the Heavenseek Pavilion could be so big and famous was entirely because of integrity. With integrity, they would have the capital to ask for sky-high prices. Following the locals' directions, after walking through the complicated and bustling streets for a few hours, Fang Yu finally stopped outside a magnificent and majestic hall. The reason why he did not go in was because the hall was already filled with people. A black mass of people, like a long snake, had been lined up from inside to outside for hundreds of meters. It seemed that there were quite a lot of people here to inquire about things. Helpless, Fang Yu could only line up at the back of the crowd and wait quietly. During this time, many people came out of the hall one after another. Some people's faces were full of joy, as if they had gotten the answer in their hearts. Some people's faces were like stagnant water. It seemed that the answer was not very good to them. The others were because the price was too high and they could not afford it. Move, move. Move aside, the person sitting here is the young master of the Wang family of Chiori City. He is not someone you can offend. Move aside, all of you. While Fang Yu was waiting quietly, there was a sudden shout behind him. When he turned around, he saw a few people dressed as servants carrying a huge spirit beast. There was a sedan tied to the spirit beast, and the person sitting in the sedan should be the young master of the Wang family, whom they could not afford to offend. Humans were inferior to beasts. Seeing this scene, Fang Yu immediately sighed in his heart. The cultivation of these servants was not low. They were all 3-star martial kings. And the spirit beast they were carrying was just an ordinary spirit beast with the strength of a martial king. Even so, the spirit beast did not need to walk. It was carried by the servants, and the person sitting on the spirit beast was the real master. Chapter 631. Fang Yu had never heard of the Wang family in Chiori City. As for this young master, Fang Yu had no idea where he came from. However, there were many people who lived nearby in the queue. When they heard about the Wang family in Chiori City, their expressions changed and they made way for him. Everyone, please make way. We can't afford to offend this young master. As they moved aside, they called out to the people beside them. Where did this Wang family come from? Fang Yu was pulled aside by the people beside him, but he did not resist. After being stunned for a while, he asked the young man beside him. You're not from here, right? The young man frowned and looked at Fang Yu's puzzled expression. He said, You don't know about the Wang family? I'm not from here, Fang Yu nodded and did not deny it. That's understandable. The young man nodded and said, The Wang family in Chiori City is not to be trifled with. Although they are a family, they have 5 sects behind them. These 5 sects were all the top sects in Chiori City. However, they are all supported by the Wang family. Naturally, they follow the Wang family's lead. Especially the Spirit Sword sect, they are very powerful. The sect leader of the Spirit Sword sect is already a martial honorable. In addition, the Spirit Sword sect had more than 20 elders who were at the martial royal realm and countless disciples. With the Spirit Sword sect around, the Wang family can look down on everyone, even without the other sects. Moreover, the Wang family has always been arrogant and despotic. No one dares to offend them. If they are not careful, they will be wiped out. 5 years ago, during a sect meeting, a sect's disciple accidentally offended the Wang clan. In the end, he was directly annihilated by the Sword Spirit sect. When the young man said this, he still looked fearful. He lowered his voice and whispered into Fang Yu's ear, In Taowu State, you can offend anyone. However, there are 5 sects and 7 big families that you can't offend. When the young man said this, the spiritual beast carried by the servants slowly landed on the ground. From the palanquin on the back of the spirit beast, a young man dressed like a playboy walked out. His gaze was full of disdain. After sweeping his gaze over the crowd, he seemed to be very satisfied when he saw that everyone had avoided him. Nodding his head, he swaggered into Heavenseek Pavilion. Sigh. Bear with it, who asked him to be a proud son of heaven. We'll just wait a little longer. The young man beside Fang Yu sighed helplessly. Almost all of the people who came here had something to ask of him, so their hearts were definitely restless. If someone else were to cut in line, they would most likely be attacked by the crowd. However, no one dared to make a sound for the young master of the Wang clan. Practically no one dared to voice their anger. Only then did Fang Yu roughly understand that there were more than 20 cities in Taowu Prefecture. Apart from the distant Star City and Qiushi City in the center of the city, there were a few major cities. The remaining cities were all places that were not worth mentioning. In distant Star City there were a few big clans. These clans were not just simple clans. Behind them there were sects that supported them. And these sects were equivalent to serving the clans and cooperating with each other. Among them, the Su clan that belonged to distant Star City was the most powerful. Behind the Su clan, there were 7 big sects and countless small sects that were scattered in various places in Taowu Prefecture. Next were the Zhang clan and the Li family. These 2 big clans also had many big sects behind them. However, their strength was not as strong as the Su clan. These clans stood side by side and formed a balance between each other. Usually, they would not fight with each other. Vaguely, they were also an existence that kept each other in check. Therefore, these years, the generation in Taowu Prefecture had been peaceful. As for the arrogant young master of the Wang clan was still a lot weaker than the Su clan and the other clans. However, in Qiushi City, they were considered a dominant existence. Bang bang bang! Just as Fang Yu was secretly calculating in his heart, a series of loud noises suddenly came from Heavenseek Pavilion. Damn, what's going on? Young Master Wang won't cause trouble here, right? He's making a move here? Then can we still ask about our business? Everyone went forward with some doubts, wanting to see what was going on inside. Ouch! Fang Yu was also a little surprised. Just as he was about to poke his head out to see what was going on inside, 2 screams suddenly came from Heavenseek Pavilion. The voice sounded vaguely familiar. Just as Fang Yu was about to imagine the owner of the voice in his mind, a sudden gust of wind swept past his ears. He quickly took 2 steps back and dodged it. A figure fell heavily in front of Fang Yu, accompanied by a loud noise. As the dust settled, Fang Yu could see clearly that the black figure on the ground was young Master Wang, who had just walked into Heavenseek Pavilion with a dignified and arrogant face. What's going on? Isn't this young Master Wang? Damn, who dares to hit him? Are you looking for death? The people who were originally in line all gathered around at this time. Looking at young Master Wang, who was lying on the ground like a dead dog, many people were shocked. At the same time, many people were secretly delighted. This guy was really too arrogant. His actions were so high profile that many people were unhappy with him. If not for the fact that they were wary of the power behind him, some people would have already made a move on him. At this moment, someone actually beat him up. This was really a joyous occasion. However, they were also very surprised. Who in Heavenseek Pavilion dared to hit the young master of the Wang family, the number 1 family in Shire City? Moreover, he hit him so hard. Young master! Get lost! Young master, are you all right? When the few servants who were carrying the spiritual beast saw young Master Wang fall to the ground, they all surrounded him and hurriedly helped him up. Fang Yu then saw that young Master Wang's face was already swollen and looked like a pig's head. Even so, there was still no resentment in his eyes. When he looked at Heavenseek Pavilion, his eyes were still filled with fear. Young master, what's the situation? The few servants were still asking questions. Get lost! Young Master Wang roared and vented all his anger on the servant beside him. After a long while, he finally regained his composure and looked at Wen Tian Pavilion with eyes full of resentment. Damn it, how dare you hit me? Just you wait. After saying that, he climbed onto the spiritual beast and left without a moment's hesitation. This scene caused the onlookers to be somewhat dumbfounded. The remaining servants naturally did not dare to stay any longer since their master had been beaten up. They hurriedly squeezed through the crowd and disappeared after a while. Fang Yu looked at their disappearing backs and sneered in his heart. He turned back to look at Heavenseek Pavilion. This place was not ordinary. Chapter 632. When Tian Pavilion was not big. The building was extremely grand, especially on the second floor. Just now, when young Master Wang was being beaten, Fang Yu clearly felt the aura from the second floor. It was extremely violent. There was no intention of holding back. If young Master Wang had not run fast enough, he would have been dead. Even so, he was still sent flying with a kick. Slowly retracting his gaze, Fang Yu sized up when Tian Pavilion. The person who attacked just now should be a martial emperor. Otherwise, young Master Wang would not have been beaten to such a state so easily. After all, young Master Wang was also a peak martial king. Just as Fang Yu was muttering to himself, an extremely powerful aura suddenly erupted from Wen Tian Pavilion. The aura instantly enveloped the space below Wen Tian Pavilion, as if it was looking down on all heroes, with an extremely violent suppressive force. Under this force, many people below the martial king level were already unable to move. This force was too strong. If anyone from the outside comes to Wen Tian Pavilion to ask for information, this old man will welcome you with a smile. An extremely old and dry voice, accompanied by this aura, slowly floated down from the second floor of Wen Tian Pavilion. This voice sounded a little weathered, but it revealed a powerful majestic aura. This kind of majesty made everyone downstairs not dare to make a sound. Of course, those who come to Wen Tian Pavilion to cause trouble. This old man does not mind keeping you company. The old voice rang out again into everyone's ears with a sense of authority and shock. It was self-evident. This was the strength of a martial emperor. This is the last time. Come to Wen Tian Pavilion, no matter who you are. You must abide by the rules of Wen Tian Pavilion and line up obediently. No one has any privileges. The old man said the last sentence with conviction and conviction. His meaning was obvious. He was secretly mocking young Master Wang from Xia Air City. Not only did he not follow the rules, but after he entered, he might have even spoken rudely to the old man. Otherwise, the old man would not have dealt such a heavy blow to him. Fang Yu laughed coldly. From the looks of it, this Heavenseek Pavilion still had its own temper. No matter who it was, no matter what status it was, they didn't give him any face. Of course, this was also related to the Heavenseek Pavilion's own strength. The shopkeeper of the Heavenseek Pavilion was a martial saint. Even the most powerful clan in the distant Star City, the Su clan, was only a martial honorable at most in the sect. Furthermore, it was impossible for Heavenseek Pavilion's shopkeeper to have no subordinates. If they really fought, Heavenseek Pavilion might not necessarily be at a disadvantage. Moreover, there was no need for such a battle. After all, given that they were of equal strength, it was unlikely for a one-sided battle to occur. In the end, it would end up in a life-and-death struggle. There were still other powers around, so no one would dare to go all out. Therefore, this should be the reason why Heavenseek Pavilion had such a temper and confidence. So what if he offended the Wang clan? The sect behind the Wang clan would definitely not come to the distant Star City to find trouble with the Heavens-seeking Pavilion. Even if they came, there were still so many sects watching them. If things went wrong, the people who came might not be able to return. The old man's words slowly faded away. After a long while, everyone finally regained their freedom. Just now, the old man's aura was too strong, suppressing them to the point that they could not breathe. At this moment, they felt a little better. The line continued to maintain its original state. After young Master Wang's lesson, these people were even more well-behaved now. They all lined up obediently. No one dared to cut the line or make a ruckus. Fang Yu was originally at the back of the line. At this moment there was a group of people standing behind him. The sky gradually darkened. From afternoon to night, the line in front of Fang Yu was finally completed. When it was Fang Yu's turn, the sky was already completely dark. Fang Yu took a step into the heaven-seeking pavilion, and the wooden stairs creaked. The decorations here were very exquisite and luxurious. From top to bottom there was an extremely strong aura. This kind of aura carried a faint trace of malevolence even to a martial king. Furthermore, people below the martial king level would not be able to raise their head. Fang Yu slowly walked up the spiral stairs. When he reached the highest floor, the space on the second floor entered his vision. This was a study. The study room was separated by a screen. Behind the screen, there was a strong aura faintly coming from it. Presumably, that was the old man who warned the people outside in the afternoon. This old man was an elder of the Heavenseek Pavilion. All the news had to go through his mouth to pass it on to others. This old man only released a little bit of his aura, but it shocked Fang Yu. It was hard to imagine how strong he was. Although he was only a martial emperor, he was obviously much stronger than other martial emperors. The locals said that this old man was called Heavenseek Old Man. He was the 4th generation elder of Heavenseek Pavilion. He was very strong and had a good relationship with the shopkeeper. Therefore, he had always been important. Fang Yu did not dare to peek at Heavenseek Old Man behind the screen. He only stood respectfully in front of the desk and bowed. After all, he had something to ask of him. Fang Yu did not want to offend him. Moreover, this old man's strength was so strong. "Senior, I have a favor to ask of you." After bowing, Fang Yu finally spoke and asked slowly. Heavenseek Old Man behind the screen did not seem to have any intention of replying. He only fiddled with an unknown object in his hand. After a while, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "Brother, I'm really sorry. Heavenseek Pavilion is closed for the day. Please come back tomorrow." After speaking, he waved his hand, indicating for Fang Yu to leave. Fang Yu was dumbfounded. It was like a bolt from the blue. After waiting in line for an entire afternoon, he had finally found the answer to the question in his heart. In the end, he was told that the pavilion was closed? The ups and downs in his heart were not small at all. Come back tomorrow? What a joke! Wait in line for an entire afternoon tomorrow? Fang Yu shook his head. Obviously, he did not have much time to waste. In a few days, it would be the day of the sect assembly. Fang Yu had to find the whereabouts of the Pill Saint before the sect assembly. Furthermore, he had to ask for a high-grade furnace. This matter could not be delayed. "Senior, don't say any more. I'm sure you know the rules of Heavenseek Pavilion?" Fang Yu wanted to say something, but the moment he opened his mouth, he was coldly interrupted by Heavenseek Old Man. Especially the word rules. He intentionally or unintentionally emphasized it. It was as if he was reminding Fang Yu of something. Chapter 633. This tone was very familiar to Fang Yu. It was the same tone that Wentian Old Man used after teaching young Master Wang a lesson. The warning tone was very deep. "Leave quickly. I don't want to repeat myself." Wentian Old Man's cold voice sounded out again. Fang Yu's heart tightened. He wanted to say something, but it seemed like this guy was not going to give Fang Yu a chance. Helpless, he could only slowly turn around. Just as he was about to leave, Fang Yu suddenly thought of something and slapped a handful of crystals on the table. "Senior, I'll spend money to buy a few minutes of your time, just a few minutes." After saying this, Fang Yu became alert. In this world, some people were greedy and some people were not. Fang Yu did not know which type Wentian Old Man belonged to. Of course, Wentian Pavilion's rules were very strict, and young Master Wang did not even put them in his eyes. Thus, when he said this, Fang Yu did not have any confidence. He was afraid that Wentian old man would suddenly make things difficult for him, and could only secretly be on guard. Luckily, it was out of Fong Yu's expectations. Wentian old man obviously belonged to the latter. Under Fong Yu's vigilance, his hoarse throat moved, and then he said, 50 crystals, you want to buy a few minutes of my time? His tone was obviously more polite than before. There's a chance. Fong Yu was overjoyed. It was obvious that Wentian old man was very interested in these crystals. However, this old man seemed to be a bit too greedy. A man whose heart was not content was like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Fong Yu placed a total of 50 crystals on the table. This was already the most that Fong Yu could accept in his heart. The original plan in his heart was only 10 crystals. Although Wentian Pavilion's price was high, Fong Yu was confident that 10 crystals was enough to deal with Wentian old man. And 50 crystals were already taken out by Fong Yu while enduring the pain. His heart was bleeding. He did not expect Wentian old man to think that it was not enough. He was shocked and even had the thought of killing Wentian old man. Unfortunately, he came to Wentian Pavilion because he had a request. Living under someone else's roof, he could only swallow his anger. Fong Yu had no choice but to endure the pain in his heart. He took out another 20 crystals and placed them on the desk. He took a deep breath and said slowly, as long as Senior can solve the confusion in my heart, the rest of these will belong to you. Yes. This time, as soon as Fong Yu finished speaking, the Wentian old man behind the screen gave a satisfied reply. Fong Yu grimaced in pain for a long time before he finally calmed down. Senior, I would like to inquire about a person. With the money here, Fong Yu felt more confident and asked directly. Asking about people? Behind the screen, Wentian old man asked. That's right. Fong Yu nodded. You've come to the right place to look for our Heaven-Seek Pavilion. Wentian old man laughed and said, From the western baron to the northern border, we have news of anyone who has stayed in by and state. Ask away. Wentian old man's tone was arrogant, as if he had a card up his sleeve. I want to know the whereabouts of Senior Pill Saint. After a long while, Fong Yu said slowly, Pill Saint? Wentian old man was surprised. Why are you looking for him? I have a request. Fong Yu did not beat around the bush and was very direct. Behind the screen, Wentian old man said indifferently. He then said, His whereabouts are unknown to most people. However, our Wentian Pavilion just received news of him the day before yesterday. At this point, Fong Yu heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that all those crystals were not wasted. However, before he could completely relax, Wentian old man's voice sounded from behind the screen. I can tell you where he is. However, these crystals of yours are destined to be wasted. I advise you to be mentally prepared. Wentian old man laughed dryly and directly whetted Fong Yu's appetite. Senior, why do you say that? Fong Yu asked in confusion. That Pill Saint's personality is really strange. Under normal circumstances, he would not even bother with anyone. If you go find him like this, it's already unprecedented that he would bother with you. Furthermore, you have a request. If I'm not wrong, you're looking for him to ask for pills, or to ask him to forge a pill furnace. Wentian old man's words came slowly, causing Fong Yu to be shocked. This old man had interacted with so many people. It seemed like his ability to read people's minds was very strong. Or perhaps, Fong Yu was not the only one who came to Wentian Pavilion to inquire about the whereabouts of the Pill Saint. Therefore, he guessed Fong Yu's purpose in one glance. Senior, just tell me where Senior Pill Saint is. As for whether he's willing or not, let's talk about it later. After thinking for a while, Fong Yu still spoke. This Wentian old man liked to keep people in suspense. Fong Yu did not like to interact with this kind of person. It was too tiring. Autumn Sun City, Violet Spirit Mountain. You can find the Pill Saint there. Behind the screen, Wentian old man did not keep people in suspense, and said directly, "Thank you, senior." Fang Yu nodded, placed the crystals on the table, and turned to leave. "I'd advise you to give up on that idea. In these years, there were many people who came to inquire about the whereabouts of the Pill Saint, but in the end, none of them asked for his help." Behind him, Wentian old man's words slowly entered Fang Yu's ears. Fang Yu shook his head. He had already made up his mind. This Pill Saint, he must meet him. Furthermore, he was determined to obtain this high-grade alchemy furnace. Autumn Sun City, Senior Pill Saint really knows how to pick a place, Fang Yu sighed in his heart. Young Master Wang, who was thrown out of Wentian Pavilion by Wentian Old Man, was from Autumn Sun City. As for Violet Spirit Mountain, it was not difficult to find. On the way, Fang Yu casually asked a local and found out the exact location of Violet Spirit Mountain. It was the most famous mountain range in the west of Autumn Sun City. At the same time, it was also the most dangerous mountain range in the vicinity. There, spirit beasts gathered in groups, and their strength was violent. There were also rumors that many people who were full of killing were hiding in the mountain range. Over the years, the Violet Spirit Mountain had become a place of great danger that everyone knew. As long as it was a local, no one dared to set foot there. Many people who were not afraid of death went there to train, but in the end they did not return. From the looks of it, the reason why the Pill Saint appeared there was probably because he was tired of the mortal world. In order to avoid the world, he lived there in seclusion. Autumn Sun City was not big, but its prosperity was not inferior to distant Star City in the slightest. Of course, Autumn Sun City was a few days away from distant Star City. After thinking for a while, Fang Yu did not inform the old man and went alone. According to the direction of the local, Fang Yu hurried all the way. Along the way, he met many sects and forces one after another. Most of these sects were from Swan Prefecture. Behind them, there were big families to rely on. At this time, they should be participating in the sect meeting. Chapter 634. Fang Yu moved forward carefully. Along the way, he was careful and did not interact with anyone. In order to avoid trouble, Fang Yu tried his best to avoid all the crowds. In this way, the speed of his progress was much slower. Finally, on the fourth day, Fang Yu stood in front of a majestic city. At this time, the city was desolate. On the streets there were not many people. It looked quite desolate. Compared to the distant Star City, this place was really too desolate. After asking around, Fang Yu turned out that in this Taowu state, not only Chiu-Ri City, but also the other dozens of cities were basically formed by sections. The local residents were almost all disciples of the sections. At this time, it was the day of the sects meeting. Many experts and disciples of the sects were all gathered in the distant Star City. Therefore, this place was relatively desolate. There were only a few people on the street. Fang Yu did not stay for long. He found the direction of Purple Spirit Mountain and sped up again. Finally, on the second day, a continuous mountain range appeared in front of him. The mountain range was so high that the top could not be seen. It stretched for hundreds of miles. From afar, it was densely covered with branches and forest. There were few traces of people. Looking from afar, the scenery here was not bad. However, the locals knew that there were many dangers hidden under this spectacular scenery. In the past 100 years, countless drunken and murderous butchers had been hiding in this dense forest in Taowu Province. Fang Yu calmed down. This Purple Spirit Mountain was really big. He did not know where the Pill Saint would be. However, since he had already come here, there was no reason to retreat. After channeling all the spiritual energy in his Dantian Qi Si to his whole body, Fang Yu released all of his perception and scanned the surroundings. After scanning the surroundings, he did not feel any strong aura. Other than the aura of spirit beasts that flashed by, there was no other abnormality. Fang Yu then stepped into the dense mountain forest. The mountain forest covered a large area. However, there was only one road up. Perhaps because no one had set foot on it for many years, this road was almost covered with dense branches. The journey forward was not easy. A few hours later, Fang Yu followed the downward terrain and walked into a canyon. In this canyon, what came into view was also a sea of green. A few spirit beasts were entrenched in front of them. These spirit beasts were very powerful. Just by looking at their physical bodies, they were all at the peak of the Emperor realm. Furthermore, there were 6 of them. Fang Yu couldn't help but become cautious. At this time, he did not dare to be careless. At the entrance of the Wind Valley in the Frost Smoke Mountain Range, Fang Yu had personally witnessed a few peak martial king experts dealing with a spirit beast of this rank. Just one of them was enough to injure many people. What was truly frightening about this spirit beast was not its strength, but its physical body. That barbaric charge was enough to tear apart many people below the martial royal realm. If it wasn't for Fang Yu's dragon armor protecting him, he would have been crushed into powder. Carefully avoiding the group of spirit beasts, Fang Yu went around the canyon. This was already the largest area within the range of his perception. The space behind was unknown. However, just as Fang Yu was about to continue releasing his perception to investigate the area, Fang Yu suddenly stopped. Suddenly, there was a stuffy heat around him. This stuffy heat came suddenly and left just as quickly. However, it was still clearly captured by Fang Yu. Earth vein fire. Fang Yu was shocked, and a strange thought instantly surged into his mind. This feeling just now was undoubtedly the earth vein fire. The earth vein fire was as its name implied. This fire was not an open fire, it did not belong to man, nor did it belong to the heavens. It was similar to underground spring water, coming from the earth veins. Different from volcanoes, the temperature of the earth vein fire was not high. However, it burned for a long time. Usually, an earth vein fire could burn for thousands of years. Moreover, this fire was very pure. There seemed to be no trace of it in the entire Jiaozhou. As for the continent where the Tianji Institute was located, it was even more unheard of. Unfortunately, this earth vein fire did not have much effect on ordinary cultivators. At most, it had an auxiliary effect on tempering the body. However, this earth vein fire was a great opportunity for alchemists. When he was in the Azure Dragon Academy, Yao Qi once said that the best elixirs in the world were none other than supreme-grade elixirs. And the refining of supreme-grade elixirs was none other than a high-grade alchemy furnace. Usually, the conditions for supreme-grade elixirs were high-grade spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs, as well as a high-grade alchemy furnace. Neither of these two things could be missing. However, with the earth vein fire, refining elixirs would be much easier. Even if it was not a high-grade spiritual flower or spiritual herb, after being tempered by the temperature of the earth vein fire, there was a chance to condense into a supreme-grade elixir. As long as the alchemist put his mind to it, it might even surpass the grade of a supreme-grade elixir. The earth vein fire was truly a rare sight. Fang Yu had never heard of it in history. The reason why he could be certain with just a slight feeling was that there was a faint pill fragrance accompanying this warm fire. This pill fragrance was rich at first, but after a while, it dimmed a lot. However, after dimming, it did not dissipate for a long time and was soul-stirring. Just the pill fragrance alone was enough to intoxicate people. Fang Yu was very familiar with this pill fragrance. Supreme-grade elixirs. He had refined this supreme-grade elixir not long ago. However, that elixir took him a lot of effort. If it was on the earth vein fire, it would be twice the result with half the effort. Following the pill fragrance, Fang Yu gradually moved forward. He was sure that this supreme-grade elixir was definitely made by an expert. It was most likely the legendary alchemy saint. One had to know that the supplementary ingredient for supreme-grade elixirs, the purple daylily, was not easy to find. Not everyone was as lucky as Fang Yu to have a chance encounter. Without the purple daylily, even with the earth vein fire, it was completely impossible to refine a supreme grade elixir. Therefore, there was only one possibility. The alchemist was the alchemy saint. The alchemy saint's attainments in alchemy were much higher than Fang Yu's. There was even a saying that any one of the alchemy saint's elixirs had the effect of reviving the dead. It was no wonder that the alchemy saint would appear in this purple spirit mountain. The earth vein fire was not something that everyone could find. However, once it appeared, it would definitely attract many alchemists. For a sensitive expert like the alchemy saint, it was naturally not difficult to find the earth vein fire here. Previously, Fang Yu had thought that the alchemy saint was tired of the mortal world and hid in this dangerous purple spirit mountain. Now, it was clear that it was the earth vein fire that had attracted the alchemy saint. Perhaps it was not only the alchemy saint. Once the news of the earth vein fire here spread, it would definitely attract many alchemists. By then, this purple spirit mountain would be lively. Chapter 635. The weather in the purple spirit mountains was a little humid. Moving forward here was obviously not an easy task. Moreover, along the way, he had to be on guard against all kinds of ferocious beasts and extremely vicious people who had been hiding here for years. Therefore, Fang Yu's walking speed was not fast. Fortunately, the pill fragrance of this peerless pill did not dissipate for a long time. Following the pill fragrance, Fang Yu went all the way down. An hour later, the vision in front of him gradually widened. After coming out of the dense forest, in front of him was a waterfall pouring down. The waterfall was not very spectacular. It was just a small stream of water slowly dripping down. Further ahead was a bamboo forest. The bamboo forest was dense and there were many bamboo leaves. Under the bamboo forest, there was a small straight path that passed through a slowly flowing stream and arrived in front of a simple wooden house. In front of the wooden house, there was a wooden shelf. On the wooden shelf, there were many spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs densely arranged. These flowers and spiritual herbs were placed very neatly. Looking from afar, one could clearly feel that there were traces of spiritual energy all over them. All of these spiritual herbs were of the highest grade. He did not know where they came from, and the faint pill fragrance in the surroundings that had not dissipated for a long time was slowly drifting out from this wooden house. Fang Yu carefully walked into the bamboo forest. After passing through the bamboo forest, the wooden house in front of him gradually became clear. This wooden house was not big and was a little simple. It could barely be considered as shelter. Fang Yu slowly released his perception and wandered around the wooden house. A wave of aura that was not very strong slowly spread out from the wooden house. There was someone in the wooden house. Although the aura was not very strong, Fang Yu could clearly feel that there was some power of an alchemist in this aura. Pure alchemists usually did not have a very high level of cultivation. There were specializations in the field. They would not be obsessed with cultivation. Instead, they would be obsessed with herbs all day long. Therefore, the cultivation of most alchemists would not exceed the martial emperor level. However, not having a high cultivation did not mean that their status was not high. Every sect, or even every family, would usually have alchemists. These alchemists' cultivation was generally not high. But in the family or sect, their status was ridiculously high. It could be said that he was second only to one person and above all. After all, on the path of cultivation, whether it was the advancement of one's realm or injuries, without exception, they all required the use of alchemists' pills. Therefore, most people were very respectful towards alchemists. Alchemists like the alchemy saint were respected by everyone in the entire Taowu state, let alone sects and clans. Over the years, who knew how many reputable figures had to humble themselves in front of him? After all, the pills of the pill saint could not only bring the dead back to life, but they were also of great help in raising one's cultivation. Therefore, an unwritten rule had been formed in the various large sects over the years. No matter who it was, no one was allowed to lay their hands on an alchemist. Otherwise, they would definitely gang up on him. Who's outside? Just as Feng Yu retracted his perception, Feng Yu's eyes lit up. A hoarse voice came from inside the wooden house. There was a hint of authority in his voice. Junior Feng Yu requests an audience with Senior Pill Sage. At such a close distance, even if the person in the wooden house had a low cultivation level, he would have definitely discovered Feng Yu by now. Therefore, Feng Yu did not hide at all. He took a step forward and spoke slowly. Alchemy Saint? A hoarse voice came slowly from the wooden house again. There's no such person. Go back. After saying that, he did not say anything else. In this continent of Taowu state, who else can refine this supreme-grade pill with just the earth vein fire without relying on supreme-grade spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers, other than Senior Pill Sage? The old man's words were obviously within Feng Yu's expectations. It was fine if the old man did not explain. Once he spoke, he was exposed. Feng Yu said without batting an eyelid. Oh? As expected, as soon as Feng Yu finished speaking, the old man in the house murmured. Then, he laughed dryly and said, I didn't expect you to have such attainments in the Tao of alchemy at such a young age. After saying that, he seemed to be mocking himself and continued, Since you can recognize my identity, I won't hide it anymore. Come in and have a seat. As soon as he finished speaking, the door of the wooden house was pushed open by an internal force. The pill sage was not as difficult to talk to as he had imagined. There was a chance. Feng Yu muttered to himself. He did not hesitate and walked directly into the wooden house. As soon as he entered the house, a faint and pure pill fragrance wafted into Feng Yu's nose. This kind of pill fragrance really made people somewhat intoxicated. However, it was not only this supreme-grade pill that attracted Feng Yu. His gaze was now on the alchemy furnace in the middle of the wooden house. This alchemy furnace was exquisite and small. It was small but pure. Lifelike pen lines were carved around the alchemy furnace. The pen lines formed the shape of spiritual herbs on the alchemy furnace. Not only that, the spiritual herbs carved on the alchemy furnace were as lifelike as if they were alive. An old man was sitting beside the alchemy furnace. The old man was close to 80 years old, but he exuded an unconcealable arrogance from head to toe. Under this arrogance, the old man's face was flushed red. Although he was wearing a shabby long robe, it was not difficult to see the old man's strength. A martial emperor. Although his cultivation level was not very high, his every word and action had the appearance of a transcendent being. The old man's face was as calm as water. He sat beside the alchemy furnace and sized up Feng Yu. Then, he stretched out his hand and said, Please take a seat. After saying that, he looked at the alchemy furnace. His eyes were filled with extreme seriousness. This was his seriousness about alchemy and also his respect for the Tao of alchemy. Feng Yu was no longer stunned. He sized up the wooden house. Apart from a bed, there was only the alchemy furnace in the house. There were all kinds of spiritual herbs hanging around the house, including those that Feng Yu could not name. After slowly sitting down, Feng Yu did not make a sound or make any movements. He had refined pills before and knew that this was the critical moment of condensing the pill. He could not be too distracted. Otherwise, even if the supreme grade pills were completed, the grade would not be so pure. This step could be said to be extremely crucial. It was not critical, but it was not very critical. It was completely dependent on the alchemist's pursuit of the pill. Once the supreme grade pill was completed, it would not be a big deal even if he stopped. However, after a period of time, the supreme grade pill would be 100% perfect. The alchemy saint in front of him seemed to be pursuing 100% perfection and did not want to have any flaws. Even at this point, he still guarded carefully, not daring to be distracted in the slightest. Since he had nothing to do, Fang Yu also sensed the surroundings. The power of the earth vein fire seemed to be very rich here. Compared to the previous flash, the earth vein fire here was much purer. Chapter 636. In the wooden house, the pill saint was still holding his breath. Fang Yu was shocked. After a short moment of sensing, Fang Yu was almost certain of his guess. The endless stream of earth vein fire originated from beneath the wooden house. In other words, this was the center of the earth vein fire. It was also the place where the earth vein fire was the purest and the most vigorous. It seemed that the pill saint knew the earth vein fire like the back of his hand. Not only could he easily find the source, but he could also stay here all year round. This state of mind was not comparable to ordinary people. Finally, after a few hours of meditation by Fang Yu, the pill saint slowly moved. His eyes gradually shifted away from the alchemy furnace, and the pure aura on his body also slowly retracted. The pill condensation stifling fragrance was completed. Fang Yu murmured in his heart. He almost did not need to open the alchemy furnace to check. Just the smell alone was enough to confirm that the grade of this peerless grade elixir was incomparably pure. Compared to the supreme grade immortal pills that he had refined with various supreme grade spiritual herbs and spiritual flowers, it was even better. This was the power of the pill saint. If this pill was given to the fat man from the Lu family in the Fantasy Sea City, it could be sold for more than 10,000 crystals. Fang Yu stared at the alchemy furnace and thought to himself, "Young man, how did you know that there was earth vein fire in this area?" After a while, the pill saint slowly gathered his thoughts and looked at Fang Yu and asked. There was a look of surprise in his eyes. After all, the terrain in Purple Spirit Mountain was too complicated. Ordinary people would not dare to set foot in this place. Not only did Fang Yu dare to come, but he also accurately found the earth vein fire. If he was not a professional alchemist, he would not be so sensitive. Unknowingly, he had developed an interest in Fang Yu. I also found the earth vein fire by accident. As for being able to find this place, I also smelled the pill fragrance and came here by luck. Facing the pill saint, Fang Yu did not beat around the bush and spoke the truth. You are honest. The pill saint smiled and nodded. Then, he looked at Fang Yu and asked again, Just now, you said you have something to ask of me. Are you asking for pills, or? I would like to implore Senior to help me forge a high-grade alchemy furnace. Just as the pill sage finished speaking, Fang Yu had already spoken. The way he looked at the pill saint was very sincere. The only thing missing was a sentence. It's best if it's this kind of pill furnace that you use. Oh? The alchemy saint frowned. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile, as if he had already expected Fang Yu to say this. This was because if an ordinary person were to see the peerless grade pill in the furnace, they might not be able to resist the temptation. However, Fang Yu's eyes did not waver at all. Very clearly, he was not interested in medicinal pills. The only thing he was really interested in was the alchemy furnace. Senior, everyone knows that your alchemy skills are amazing. But very few people know that your ability to forge alchemy furnaces is even stronger. So this time, I'm here to ask you to forge a high-grade alchemy furnace for me. As for the price, it's not a problem. Fang Yu was confused for a moment, but he still pretended to be rich. Although he was reluctant, he had to give it his all for the sake of this high-grade alchemy furnace. Young man, you're very sincere. When the pill sage heard Fang Yu's words, he wasn't surprised. Instead, he chuckled and got up to pour himself a cup of tea. After drinking for a while, the pill saint said slowly, Alchemy is not difficult. But alchemy furnaces are different. The pill saint pointed at the furnace in front of him and said slowly, Don't underestimate this small furnace. This is made in the best brick kiln in the barren city of the northern region. Not only is the process troublesome, but it also requires a lot of time. The pill saint shook his head when he said this. It was obvious that he could not do it. However, Fang Yu was not going to give up. Since he was already here, there was no reason to give up so easily. He thought for a while and said, "As long as you're willing to do it, I'll find these materials myself." "It's not about the materials." As soon as Fang Yu finished speaking, the pill sage shook his head again. He sighed and said slowly, "I'm old and my efforts are limited. It's really a stalk of purple daylily." Before the pill saint could finish, Fang Yu had already spoken. His voice was very decisive. He was not worried that interrupting the pill saint would cause him to be unhappy. In fact, he was very confident. When he was sitting down, Fang Yu had been thinking about how to persuade the pill saint to do it. After thinking about it, he decided that a person of his status would not be greedy. He did not lack money, nor did he lack fame. Then, he could only cater to his interests. What was the pill saint's hobby? Alchemy, of course. And alchemy required spiritual flowers and spiritual herbs. After looking around the room, Fang Yu did not find a single spiritual herb that was better than a superior spiritual herb. Then, he could only use a rare item like the purple daylily to test the pill saint's ability. Oh! Sure enough, when the pill saint heard the 3 words purple xian flower, he suddenly frowned, but after a moment, his expression returned to normal. One could see that there was some surprise and even some desire in his eyes. Although this expression disappeared in a flash. However, it was still clearly captured by Fang Yu. The pill saint was definitely interested in the purple daylily. "Little brother, which sect are you from?" After the pill saint heard Fang Yu's offer, he was indeed a little moved. However, he did not show it. Instead, he started to change the topic. Of course, he was not avoiding the question. Instead, he doubted the authenticity of Fang Yu's words. After all, the purple daylily was very rare in the world. He had been refining pills his whole life, and had never seen a stalk of it. It would be a lie if he said that he did not want it. But for such a precious herb, the pill saint could barely believe it if it was said by a big figure from a big sect. Fang Yu was just a young man. He did not believe Fang Yu's words. Heavenly Secrets Institute. Fang Yu did not hide it and said directly. After all, he could exchange for the purple daylily. This was not a lie. With confidence, he was naturally not afraid to report his sect. What? However, to Fang Yu's surprise, the pill saint's expression changed when he heard the words Heavenly Secrets Institute. His previous carefree expression was swept away in an instant. Is it the Heavenly Books Institute from before? His tone became a lot faster. That's right. Fang Yu did not understand and nodded. He really did not know why the pill saint was so excited. Who is your master? The pill saint asked again. Jiu Xian, Fang Yu quickly answered. Ha 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 ha. Unexpectedly, when the pill saint heard the words Jiu Xian, his expression changed and he actually laughed out loud. This appearance was completely different from the sage-like aura he gave off earlier. Chapter 637. Fang Yu was dumbfounded by the pill saint's smile. After a long while, he came back to his senses. Senior pill saint, do you know my master? Fang Yu asked carefully, not knowing if he was happy or worried. After all, Fang Yu knew that the old man was a troublemaker. It was not hard to guess if the old man had offended the pill saint. If the two of them had anything to do with each other, then Fang Yu's plan would be in vain. He regretted it a little. He should not have introduced himself just now. There was obviously some enmity between the two of them. Looking at the pill saint's expression, it seemed that it was not small. No wonder when he mentioned the pill saint to the old man, he had a strange look on his face, and even kept calling him that old man. It was obvious that the two of them knew each other. Fang Yu was shocked. He blamed himself for being so stupid that he did not realize it. Ever since Fang Yu joined the Heavenly Chance Institute, he had been tricked by the old man. Now, He had to delay his plan because of the old man's problem. This Heavenly Chance Institute, this old man, was indeed not a good place, Fang Yu complained in his heart. If the pill saint hated the old man and took his anger out on him, he might even attack him. Although the pill saint's cultivation was not very high, he was after all a peak martial emperor. It would be easy for him to attack Fang Yu. Senior pill saint, Fang Yu was a little nervous and muttered, "Wait, is that old man dead?" The pill saint laughed for a long while. His face was gloomy and uncertain. "No." Fang Yu shook his head. The pill saint nodded in satisfaction and said with a smile, "It's good that he's not dead, it's good that he's not dead." This action made Fang Yu confused again. Right now, he really wanted to know if this old man had ever offended the pill sage. Looking at the pill saint's strange expression, the pill saint spoke again after a long while. "Speaking of which, not only do I know your old man's master, but we also have a good relationship." The pill saint stopped laughing, took a sip of tea and said slowly, "This is bad." Fang Yu shrugged. From the pill saint's words, it seemed that the grudge between the two of them was not small. Otherwise, the pill saint, who had the demeanor of a transcendent being, wouldn't swear so much. "But you don't have to worry. The matter between me and that old fart is between the two of us. It has nothing to do with you." After the pill sage finished speaking, he saw that Fang Yu's expression wasn't good, so he hurriedly explained. After hearing this, Fang Yu finally felt relieved. It seemed that the pill saint was a pill saint after all. He was different from the old man. The old man was narrow-minded, but the pill saint was so generous. "Senior pill saint, does that mean you agree?" Fang Yu wasn't an idiot. Fang Yu had already understood the meaning behind the pill sage's words. He had definitely relented. Yes, he did. But this purple daylily. After thinking for a while, the pill saint returned to the main point. The reason why he was willing to relent was definitely not because of the old man's face. In fact, it was because of him that he would never agree to this matter. It was all because of the purple daylily. After all, the title of pill saint wasn't given for nothing. When it came to alchemy, he had a persistence that ordinary people didn't have. "I'll give it to you with both hands." As soon as the pill saint finished speaking, Fang Yu had already gritted his teeth and spent 2,000 crystals from the crystal store to exchange for the purple daylily. The pink petals had a strange but neat pattern. On the pattern there was an incomparably pure energy. The pill saint held the purple daylily in his hand and kept looking at it. His eyes were filled with surprise. "Purple daylily, it's really the purple daylily." After a while, the pill saint finally came back to his senses. A smile appeared on his face, and he nodded in satisfaction. After carefully putting away the purple daylily, he looked at Fang Yu and smiled. "Although it takes time and effort to create a supreme-grade alchemy furnace, it's not impossible. You're different from others. Others have real gold and silver, but you know what I like. No wonder the old man took you in as his disciple." After saying that, he looked at Fang Yu and seemed to be very satisfied with him. After thinking for a while, he continued, "However, I'm willing to do it. But it doesn't mean that it's done. After all, the materials for this supreme-grade alchemy furnace are not easy to find." "Don't worry about the materials." Fang Yu looked sincere and said, "As long as you're willing to do it, I'll naturally be able to get the materials." "Good." The pill saint nodded. He was very satisfied with Fang Yu's confidence. The terrain in the north is complicated and the environment is harsh. All kinds of forces are intertwined and the level of danger is high. Moreover, the people there are more hostile to the strong people in the Taoist state. You must be careful when you go there. The pill saint waved his hand and looked a little worried. "Don't worry." Fang Yu was very confident. He was afraid that the pill saint would go back on his word. He stood up and bowed. "Wait for me to get the materials, then I'll come and find you." After saying that, he ran out of the wooden house. The Pill Saint's character was quite strange. It was inevitable that he would regret it after a long time. The younger generation will surpass us in time. In the wooden house, the Pill Saint shook his head and continued to drink tea. Barren City Mountain in the north. In Chiu City, Fang Yu bought a map from a local. He found a tavern and sat inside to look at the map. After a long while, he finally found the location of Barren City Mountain at the edge of the map. That area was the most barren and desolate area in the north. The north was already very desolate. Barren City Mountain was even more barren in comparison. This map was of the Taoyuan state. However, because of the merchants in recent years, there were a few simple lines on the map. Although it was not very detailed, it was enough to identify the specific location. Barren City Mountain was not big. It was stormy all year round and sandstorms were everywhere. That area was originally a city. However, because of the extremely harsh environment, the people there had basically all moved out. Since then, that area had become Barren City. After a long period of time, a small mountain had already formed there. That was how Barren City Mountain got its name. Barren City Mountain had been abandoned for many years. However, because of its geographical location, there were still a few cities around it that were connected. To get there, one had to pass through those cities. Those cities belonged to the sphere of influence of Shire State in the northern region. Therefore, the people there were very hostile to those who went to the Shire State. If one did not have an acquaintance to help him, he would not be able to enter at all. Even if he entered, he would be attacked by the strong. After studying the map from top to bottom, he shook his head after a long while. That place was simply too dangerous. It was almost impossible to pass through the cities and reach Barren City Mountain safely. He began to worry. Chapter 638. No wonder the Elixir Saint looked helpless when he talked about Mount Desolate City. Even if it was a complicated refining method, he didn't feel troubled at all. Only Mount Desolate City felt like an insurmountable chasm to him. If even Senior Pill Sage was troubled by this, Fang Yu naturally wouldn't be any better off. He regretted being so blindly confident. After all, the Elixir Saint had hinted to him more than once that Mount Desolate City was dangerous. However, Fang Yu's mind was filled with thoughts of refining the elixir cauldron as soon as possible. He did not consider this at all. It was too late to back out now. After all, he had spent thousands of crystals to exchange for the Zishuan flower. Moreover, he had finally persuaded the Elixir Saint to refine the elixir cauldron for him. If he gave up now, wouldn't it be a waste of so many crystals? No. Fang Yu shook his head and started to think. He had to find a way to get to Mount Desolate City in Sierzu. "Waiter, give me some good wine and dishes." As he muttered to himself, a deep voice came from outside the door. The voice was rough and had a hint of authority. "Steward Zhang. Long time no see. Please come in. I'll give the order now." The waiter was standing lazily at the front desk. He was so listless that he was about to fall asleep. After all, the big sex in Chiu City had gone to distant Star City. There were only a few people on the street. The business of the tavern was even worse. It was lunchtime. However, there were only 3 people in the tavern, including Fang Yu. It was a little miserable. However, when the waiter heard the deep voice, Fang Yu could clearly feel a hint of fear on his face. Outside the door, the waiter had already respectfully led in a burly middle-aged man with a ferocious face. He wiped the table and poured tea. He was very careful with his words and actions, as if he was afraid of offending the middle-aged man. However, Fang Yu could clearly see that there was more respect in his eyes than pure fear. This piqued Fang Yu's interest. He sized up the middle-aged man. He was at the peak of the martial emperor realm. His cultivation base wasn't very high. However, the aura on his body was very violent. There were many types of popularity. Butcher had a baleful aura. Murderous aura emanated from his body. The awe-inspiring righteousness of a hero. This middle-aged man was obviously the last type. This was a kind of overwhelming righteousness. His aura was extremely powerful. If anyone below the cultivation of a martial king were to see this, they would probably be suppressed to the point of not being able to raise their heads. As for the waiter, his strength was only at the peak of the martial spirit realm. Thus, when he saw the middle-aged man, it was normal for him to be so cautious that he didn't even raise his head. Butler Zhang, long time no see. The waiter poured the tea with a smile, but his words were polite. Sigh, business hasn't been good recently, so I rarely come out. The middle-aged man's aura was powerful, and his cultivation was also very high. Normally, a person with such a cultivation level would not even bother to pay attention to a martial spirit realm cultivator. However, there was no arrogance in the middle-aged man's eyes. Is business not good recently? The waiter asked again. That's right. The middle-aged man called Butler Zhang was not impatient. After he finished speaking, he explained, recently, the relationship between the northern region and the Taowu state has been tense. Everyone is at loggerheads with each other, so we merchants don't have frequent dealings with each other. After he finished speaking, he waved at the waiter and continued, Go and prepare some wine and dishes. There are still many people in the caravan, and they will be here soon. After eating, we have to set off quickly. Understood. The waiter was also clever. After clearing the table, he quickly ran to the kitchen and ordered. A moment later, a series of dull and loud sounds slowly came from outside the tavern. Fang Yu released all his perception and began to sense. Outside, there were dozens of spirit beasts. Their bodies were huge, and their auras were very strong. Their physical strength was almost surpassing that of a martial king realm expert. Behind these dozens of spirit beasts, there were more than 20 people. These people were all in the martial royal realm, and their auras were very strong. There were also 2 people who were almost at the peak of the martial royal realm. With such a large number of people, Fang Yu still didn't know their purpose. However, according to what Steward Zhang said just now, they should be merchants. After a while, the more than 20 people walked into the tavern one after another. These people were not very old, and they were full of righteousness. After entering, they were very well behaved and did not speak much. 5 people sat at a table, and they were very neatly seated. From the moment they entered until the end of the meal, no one made a noise and no one spoke. After they finished eating, they all left the room. After Steward Zhang paid the bill, he also walked out of the tavern. These were not ordinary merchants. Fang Yu stared at the backs of these people. These people were well-trained, full of righteousness, and very strong. Ordinary people would not dare to get close to them at all, especially that Steward Zhang, who looked ferocious and intimidating at first glance. Waiter, who are these people? Fang Yu sat in the tavern. After they left, he looked at the waiter who was busy and asked, You're not a local, are you? The waiter asked as he turned around to look at Fang Yu. Fang Yu rolled his eyes. Do I need to ask you if I'm a local? However, he still nodded. Then there's something you don't know. The waiter stopped what he was doing and walked to Fang Yu's side. He lowered his voice and said, These are all people from the Chamber of Commerce. On the surface, they are merchants. In fact, these are all powerful escort leaders. To put it bluntly, they are escorting the goods and are responsible for the safety of the goods. The waiter explained and looked outside from time to time, as if he was a little afraid of those people. Chamber of Commerce? Fang Yu frowned. He had never heard of the existence of this force. After all, someone said that the few major cities in Taowu State were formed by the combination of sect forces and family forces. However, the name of the Chamber of Commerce was never mentioned. After thinking for a while, Fang Yu asked, Which sect do they belong to? Or which family? None of them. As soon as Fang Yu finished speaking, the waiter shook his head and said, the Chamber of Commerce is an independent organization. It doesn't belong to any place, sect, or family. The Chamber of Commerce was indeed established by some business families. However, because those Chamber of Commerce were involved with the families, their business was not doing well. After all, no one would trust other families or other forces. In this way, many families established the Chamber of Commerce and everyone operated their own business. However, the drawbacks soon came. As those Chamber of Commerce had families as their backing, they could be said to be high profile. Moreover, their quality was not very high. Soon, the various Chamber of Commerce offended many people. There were those from Taowu State and those from other states. Chapter 639. As a result, many people began to attack the Chamber of Commerce. The reason is very simple. These Chamber of Commerce have no prestige and their strength is also very weak. As time passed, the goods transported by those Chamber of Commerce always had problems. They were either robbed halfway or embezzled by the Chamber of Commerce's own people. In short, it was a mess. Not long after, the Chamber of Commerce of the major families disbanded one after another. However, the business had to continue. Helpless, they could only hire powerful experts to transport the goods at high prices. Over time, many powerhouses with high cultivation levels joined the ranks of transporting goods. Later, those experts spontaneously organized themselves. They established an independent Chamber of Commerce that did not belong to any family or sect. To be more precise, these guys would do things as long as they were paid. They did not belong to any faction. After all, they were a neutral existence. The waiter explained to this point and did not continue to say anything else. Fang Yu could be considered to have understood the gist of it. To put it bluntly, this Chamber of Commerce was an escort agency. However, the escort agency had declined over the years and was controlled by many families. Therefore, this gave the Chamber of Commerce a chance to exist. How big is this Chamber of Commerce? After thinking for a while, Fang Yu asked again. That's not clear. The waiter shook his head and said, This Chamber of Commerce has been established for some years. They basically do not interact with the outside world. All of their personnel are well trained. They will not say anything that they should not say. So far, no one knows the location of the Chamber of Commerce's headquarters. After all, many powerful families and sects wanted to rope in the Chamber of Commerce back then. They refused and were afraid of offending people, so they could only hide. However, this Chamber of Commerce was indeed strong. As the waiter spoke, he pointed outside and said, That group of people just now was only a group of people from the 5th caravan under the Chamber of Commerce. Just this group of people alone was enough to make no one dare to provoke them in Taowu State. It was not only because they were afraid of the forces behind them, but also because they were very strong themselves, although their strength alone was not very strong. Once these people banded together, their coordination and fighting ability was invincible. Back then, there was a martial venerable level expert who wanted to cause trouble for them, but in the end, he did not return. When the waiter said this, he still had lingering fear in his heart. After all, the martial highness realm was a godlike existence in his heart. This is just a small group of people? Fang Yu was stunned. However, what shocked him was not the fact that they had killed a martial honorable. Rather, this team of more than 20 martial emperors could only be considered a small team? That's right. The waiter quickly nodded and said, Didn't I say that this Chamber of Commerce is very big? Taowu State was originally under the jurisdiction of the 4th caravan. They were responsible for transporting the goods here. That group of people was even stronger. There were also martial venerables. But later on, it was said that the group of people went to a further place. The 5th caravan took over this place. Just the 5th caravan alone already had 10 teams of people. These 10 troops took over Chang Prefecture and the 10 prefectures within a radius of 1,000 miles. That team just now. It should be the 7th team of the 5th caravan. If the strength of the 7th team was already like this, then what about the other 6 teams? When the waiter said this, he curled his lips and shook his head, not daring to continue. The 7th team of people, when Fang Yu heard this, he could not help but be stunned. What kind of existence was this Chamber of Commerce? According to the waiter, there should be 15 caravans in the entire caravan. And among these 15 caravans, there were more than 10 teams of people in each caravan. Each team was ranked from the highest to the lowest in terms of strength. In this way, the weakest team was probably a martial king. And this Chamber of Commerce, just the 5th caravan alone, spanned across dozens of prefectures near Taowu State. Counting the entire caravan of the Chamber of Commerce, did it not mean that their forces were spread across all the prefectures in this continent? This was a little terrifying. The Chamber of Commerce was indeed very powerful. What kind of goods did that team of people send just now? After thinking for a while, Fang Yu asked a key question. After all, those who could afford to hire a caravan were definitely big families. If it was not a treasure of heaven and earth, naturally, they would not ask the caravan to escort it. I don't know about that. The waiter shook his head directly. His eyes were a little complicated and strange. He looked at Fang Yu and said, I don't want to talk too much, but I advise you not to have any ideas about them. Even a martial honorable is no match for them. The waiter mumbled, as if he thought Fang Yu was an extremely evil person. Of course not, Fang Yu shook his head. He was not a fool. Of all the people he could offend, why would he offend the caravan? That's good. The waiter nodded and continued, I think only the employer and the buyer on the other side know what they are sending. Even they themselves would not ask too much. In Chiori City, the only ones who can afford to hire a caravan are the Wang family. This is not the first time the Wang family has hired a caravan. The Wang family. Fang Yu mumbled and shook his head with a smile. When he thought of the fellow who was kicked out of the Wentian pavilion by the Wentian elder, Fang Yu felt like laughing. From their tone, they should be sending it to the northern region? Fang Yu looked at the waiter and asked again as he watched the group of people disappear into the city. That's right. The Wang family's biggest financial backer is from the northern region. The waiter explained and shook his head. He continued, in the past, they would send a caravan every 1 or 2 months. When they passed by, we would also make a lot of money. Unfortunately, the powers in the northern region are not on good terms with our Chiu prefecture. Their business has been affected, so our business has also declined. Keep the change. The waiter wanted to say something else, but Fang Yu's figure flashed. He left a crystal on the table and disappeared from the tavern. Damn, why are there so many rich people today? The waiter held the crystal and looked at it with excitement in his eyes. Fang Yu had already appeared in a forest on the outskirts of Chiori City. Below him, he was looking in the direction of the 5th caravan, which was gradually moving further and further away. The people in the northern region would not be so stupid as to go against the caravan, right? Moreover, the caravan does not belong to any powers. Unless the people in the northern region are all idiots, they would not make things difficult for them. In the dense forest, Fang Yu mumbled to himself. An idea suddenly popped up in his mind. This idea was very strong. Follow behind the 5th caravan. Chapter 640. Shire State in the Northern Region. Fang Yu did not know what was going on there. However, Fang Yu knew that they did not have a good relationship with the ethereal state. Otherwise, the 5th merchant group's business would not have been delayed. Earlier in the tavern, Fang Yu had racked his brains and thought of 10,000 ways to get there. However, none of these 10,000 methods were feasible. In other words, it was impossible for Fang Yu to enter Shire State by himself. Just as he was having a headache, the appearance of the 5th merchant group changed the situation. If one person could not get in, what about a group of people? Moreover, this group of people was from the fifth merchant group. The people in the Shire state in the northern region only had a grudge against the people of this generation in the ethereal state. The merchant group did not belong to any faction, nor did they belong to any family. They had always been cautious and kept a low profile so as not to offend anyone. They were only taking jobs in the ethereal state and had not offended any factions in Shire state. They would not make things difficult for the merchant group. Moreover, according to the waiter in the tavern, there were also merchant groups in Shire state. With the merchant group's help, even if someone wanted to make things difficult for them, they would not dare to act rashly. In addition, the buyer was from Shire state and would probably find a way to let the merchant group pass. In short, Fang Yu racked his brains but could not think of a way to get into Shire state. It was not possible for a merchant group to not be able to get into Shire state. Therefore, Fang Yu had made up his mind. He would follow behind the merchant group and find an opportunity to sneak into Shire state. With this thought, Fang Yu did not stay any longer. After walking out of the dense forest, Fang Yu carefully followed the direction of the fifth caravan. They had traveled the route from Autumn Sun City to Shire countless times. It could be said that they were very familiar with it. They could easily find the way without a map. Moreover, they had taken a detour around many major roads and followed small roads, which shortened the journey by a lot. Fang Yu was already feeling somewhat lucky. If it were not for the merchant group leading the way, he might not have left Qiushi City. Shire State was located in the northernmost region. It was a full 5 months away from Autumn City in He Prefecture. And this was under the premise that they moved very quickly. However, following the caravan's route, it was clear that 2 months was more than enough. In terms of time, it was a long time. However, Fang Yu was patient. As for the old man in the distant Star City, Fang Yu didn't care about him. That sect meeting obviously had nothing to do with him. His top priority was to find the materials and obtain a large amount of crystals. Unhurriedly following behind the fifth caravan, Fang Yu maintained a distance of over 10 miles. Firstly, it was because the members of the fifth caravan were well trained and vigilant. Secondly, if they went any further, they would be out of the jurisdiction of Ruashi State. That place was already a desolate and barren land. Therefore, other than the fifth caravan, almost no one else had set foot on it. If they got too close, they would be easily discovered. There were even a few times when Fang Yu's aura was almost detected. The caravan moved very quickly, but they were overly cautious along the way. Almost every half an hour, a powerful aura would sweep over and spy on the area within a radius of a few kilometers. Fang Yu was very familiar with this aura. It was Steward Zhang from before. After forcibly restraining his aura and barely avoiding a few spies, Fang Yu slowed down and slowly widened the distance between them. He didn't want to offend these caravan people, nor did he want to be discovered by them. After all, the most important thing now was to go to Mount Desolate City and find a high-quality brick kiln. Quietly waiting, Fang Yu probably didn't detect the aura of the caravan within a few kilometers before slowly moving forward. In front of him was already a barren land. From time to time, there were many powerful auras of spirit beasts flashing in the vicinity. However, Fang Yu was very careful to avoid them. He just followed the caravan and moved forward cautiously. In the blink of an eye, dozens of days had passed. Along the way it was boring, and Steward Zhang didn't seem to be as vigilant as before. It was almost a few hours before he released his perception to sense the surrounding area. Fang Yu's vigilance also relaxed a lot. He secretly calculated in his heart that as long as he followed them into Xiar, it shouldn't take long for him to travel the rest of the way by himself. However, Fang Yu didn't find the specific location of Mount Desolate City on the map he obtained in Piaoming State. After arriving in Xiar, it would probably take a lot of time. With this in mind, Fang Yu stopped for a while. Just as he was about to continue on his way, Suddenly, an extremely bright aura came from not far away. This aura was very strong, and it came very suddenly. It seemed to have a purpose and was heading straight for Feng Yu. This made Feng Yu a little unable to dodge in time. In a hurry, he was already locked on by this aura. It was Steward Zhang of the 5th Caravan. Feng Yu instantly reacted. This familiar aura was undoubtedly Steward Zhang. He secretly cursed in his heart. Just as he was about to dodge, the remaining dozen auras also instantly locked on to Feng Yu. It's over. Feng Yu was shocked. He had been very careful along the way. He didn't expect that he would still be discovered. The 5th Caravan was indeed worthy of its reputation. Since he had already been locked on, it was already too late to escape. What's more, Feng Yu didn't plan to escape. He stood quietly on the spot. After a while, dozens of voices appeared in front of Feng Yu. Of course, Steward Zhang was among these dozens of figures. Feng Yu forcibly suppressed his aura and tried his best not to expose his true state. There was no panic on his face. "Brother, you look a little familiar." Steward Zhang looked at Feng Yu and frowned. Then he continued, "If I'm not wrong, you've been watching us since we were in the tavern in Chiori City, right? I followed you all the way here and thought it was on the way. Unfortunately, we're already here. Could it be that it's on the way?" Steward Zhang's words were understated and light, but there was already a trace of hostility in his eyes. Obviously, he had already discovered Feng Yu's existence. This made Feng Yu a little shocked. Along the way, he had been very careful. He didn't expect that everything was within Steward Zhang's control. He murmured in his heart. But after a while, he felt relieved. After all, Steward Zhang and the others were doing this for a living. Although Steward Zhang's state was not very high, his vigilance was not comparable to ordinary people. Even if he didn't detect Feng Yu's aura, he still felt something in his heart. "Steward Zhang is so vigilant. I admire you." Feng Yu bowed respectfully and said with a smile, "Say it. You followed us all the way. What's the matter?" Chapter 641. Steward Zhang's expression was solemn and his aura did not diminish. Obviously, he had no intention of talking nonsense with Feng Yu. "It's not a big deal." Feng Yu shook his head, indicating that Steward Zhang did not need to be so nervous. "Brother, with your strength, you are not strong enough to rob our Chamber of Commerce. Let me give you a piece of advice. Go back now. I can let bygones be bygones." After all, Steward Zhang had been in this business for a long time. He had seen too many people like Feng Yu. Many people also had evil thoughts about the goods, but in the end, they were all persuaded to leave. A few people were more persistent and could only be taken down by them. That martial honorable realm powerhouse would end up dead. They did not even place a martial exalted level expert in their eyes, let alone someone like Feng Yu. Steward Zhang did not want to talk nonsense and directly tried peaceful means before resorting to force. "Steward Zhang, you misunderstood." Feng Yu shook his head. With a sincere look in his eyes, he said, "I'm not following you because I'm interested in your goods. I know what I'm capable of." "Then what do you mean?" Feng Yu's words were polite, but Steward Zhang did not intend to let down his guard and continued to ask. "I just want to follow you and take a shortcut." Feng Yu shook his head and did not tell the truth. Let's not talk about whether Steward Zhang would agree or not. Even if he agreed, it was inevitable that he would be wary of Feng Yu. It was not worth it. Moreover, Steward Zhang was not the kind of person who would easily trust others. "Brother, I'm afraid it's not easy for you to take this shortcut alone. You'd better take another route." As expected, Steward Zhang didn't hesitate in the slightest and directly refused. After saying that, he directly waved at Feng Yu. His meaning was obvious. If he did not leave, he would take action. "Steward Zhang, I'm just telling the truth." Feng Yu shook his head helplessly and then said, I'm sure you know the situation in the northern region. I can't go in alone. I have no choice but to follow you." Fang Yu didn't try to hide it and told him the truth. "You are very sincere." Hearing this, Steward Zhang sneered, then shook his head and said, "If it were any other time, we would be willing to bring you along. But this time, the goods behind us are a little expensive. It's not that I don't trust you, but I can't let my guard down. It's too troublesome to bring you along." Seeing that Fang Yu was so straightforward, Steward Zhang didn't dawdle and directly spat out the truth. 10 crystals. Take me to Shire." As soon as Steward Zhang finished speaking, Fang Yu clenched his teeth and held back the blood that was dripping from his heart as he spoke. Chambers of commerce, after all, were profit-oriented. In their eyes, money was very important. Money makes the world go round. Fang Yu was well aware of this. After all, people would die for money. Along the way, Fang Yu also clearly understood the benefits of crystal stones. Many things that could not be done could be solved with crystals. Just like in Wentian Pavilion, he was originally destined to wait until the next day. But unexpectedly, under the temptation of crystal stones, Wentian Old Man finally relented. Although the pill saint wasn't greedy, the purple daylily that could move him was also exchanged at a high price. In these 2 days, Fang Yu had already spent thousands of crystals. He didn't care about this little bit anymore. "Brother, although the price you offered is very high, our Chamber of Commerce has its rules. Each time, we can only take on 1 client, and we have to ensure time and safety. I still don't feel at ease bringing you along." 30 crystals. Seeing that Steward Zhang was unmoved, Fang Yu gritted his teeth and spoke again. After he finished speaking, he added another sentence. "Steward Zhang, I'm not competing with goods. I have the ability to protect myself. You don't have to worry too much. Just go ahead, I'll follow behind. It's fine as long as we can enter Shire. As for the rest, I definitely won't let you worry too much. As for the goods you're transporting, do you think that if I can casually take out 30 crystals, I'll care about that little bit of goods?" Fang Yu spoke eloquently, listing out the pros and cons. Especially when he mentioned the 30 crystals, Fang Yu spoke very loudly. Everyone knew that this was a good deal. After all, Fang Yu wasn't goods, and he didn't have any heavenly treasures on him. Naturally, he wouldn't attract the attention of outsiders. As long as they used the identity of a merchant to bring him into Shire, they could easily obtain a reward of 30 crystals. Steward Zhang wasn't an idiot. He definitely wouldn't refuse. As expected, after hearing Fang Yu's words, Steward Zhang was clearly stunned. Then, he turned around and looked at the few people behind him. The few of them exchanged glances, and one of them said, "This kid isn't very strong. Moreover, what he said makes sense. How about this? I'll watch over him the entire time. I don't think he'll be able to cause any big waves." After he finished speaking, Steward Zhang was a little hesitant. Then, he nodded and said, "Brother, since you want to go to Shire, then just follow. But we can't guarantee that we'll be absolutely safe. After all, you're aware of the recent situation in the Shire." "It's fine." Fang Yu shook his head, clearly unconcerned. After all, with their merchant group as a cover, even if something happened, they could escape unscathed. "That's good. Come with me." After he finished speaking, he waved at Fang Yu. Fang Yu understood the rules and directly handed the 30 crystals to Steward Zhang. Steward Zhang frowned but didn't accept them. "Brother, according to the rules of our merchant group, we can only accept payment if the goods are delivered safely. Although you're not goods, we still have to ensure that you arrive safely in Shire before we accept your payment. Otherwise, we won't take a single cent." After he finished speaking, he walked to the front of the group and signaled for them to continue on their journey. The remaining people who were looking at the goods were a little surprised by Fang Yu's arrival. However, they were considered well-trained people after all, and for a while, They didn't ask any questions. The group continued on their journey. This time, Feng Yu relaxed quite a bit. Firstly, he didn't have to be on guard against Steward Zhang checking his aura from time to time. Secondly, he didn't have to worry about how to sneak into their group after they arrived in Shire. This could be considered as having the best of both worlds. This way, the journey ahead was a lot easier. Although the surroundings were barren, with a large group of people and horses, it didn't seem lonely. However, the young man behind Feng Yu kept a careful eye on Feng Yu along the way, not leaving his side at all. This made Feng Yu feel a little uncomfortable. They followed the small path and continued forward. A week later, the barren scene before their eyes finally disappeared. In front of them was a city that didn't belong to any faction. The city of the desert, the land outside the law, Sandstone Castle. Chapter 642. This place was desolate and barren. The environment was extremely harsh. However, in this sandstone castle, there were many strong cultivators, and there was no lack of vicious and evil people. Because the geographical environment here was very complicated, and there was no one to govern this place, it had become a paradise for lawless people. Massacres would occur here every day. Robbing was a common occurrence here. Generally speaking, no one would dare to come to this place. It was normal for people to come and not return. Therefore, in these years, this place had become a paradise for lawless people. As long as one was strong enough, one could become a tyrant here. Burning, killing, and robbing were daily routines. Therefore, when he was still some distance away from the sandstone castle, Feng Yu could clearly feel the various powerful auras in front of him, as well as the refreshing smell of blood. The thick smell of blood permeated the air, and it was really uncomfortable. Feng Yu even almost vomited. At this point, housekeeper Zhang's expression suddenly became serious. Not only him, but the young escorts beside him were also extremely vigilant. A powerful aura burst out from their bodies, as if they were ready to attack at any time. Even the young man who was watching Feng Yu was distracted at this time, and did not spend much effort to care about Feng Yu. The sandstone castle is in front, right? Feng Yu frowned. When Feng Yu was in the Heavenly Chance courtyard, he had heard Blue Knight mention this place. His two unlucky senior brothers were saved from the sandstone castle by the old man. Back then, those two senior brothers had occupied a territory in the sandstone castle. Because they were strong, no one dared to provoke them. However, the sandstone castle under their rule was not so bloody and cruel. In those few years, the sandstone castle could be said to have an unprecedented period of peace. However, this period of peace did not last long. Later, a peak martial emperor expert came and began to kill and rob everywhere. The two unlucky senior brothers wanted to stop him, but they were not strong enough. In the end, they fell and almost died. If the old man had not appeared in time, the two senior brothers would have died. However, although it seemed to be a good thing that the old man had saved the two of them, it was still a good thing. Unfortunately, the old man later took them in as his disciples and brought them back to the Heavenly Fate Institute. After the two of them left, the sandstone castle was once again filled with a rain of blood. It was extremely chaotic. Until now, the sandstone castle was still in a mess, and no one had come out to rule it. Therefore, most of the people here were extremely vicious and did not care about the consequences of their actions. They would not consider tomorrow's matter at all. Housekeeper Zhang was good at dealing with other people, but it was difficult to deal with people who didn't care about their lives. The caravan became vigilant. No one said a word, and they all looked around vigilantly. Steward Zhang was especially careful. After all, many people had met with mishaps in this generation. Although they had passed through this place many times, they didn't dare to let their guard down every time. This was the only way to Shire, so there was no way around it. Every time he passed by this place, Steward Zhang would be extra careful. After all, this was related to the honor of their merchant group and the reputation of the fifth merchant group. The fifth caravan spanned across several prefectures of this continent. So far, there had not been the slightest mishap along the way. That was why their caravan's business was doing so well. Steward Zhang was old and wouldn't be able to work for much longer. Therefore, the closer it was, the more vigilant he was. There must not be any mishaps. Fortunately, there seemed to be people fighting in the sandstone castle at this time. When the caravan passed through the sandstone castle, some people just casually sized them up a few times without much reaction. These people were still somewhat rational. They knew that this caravan was not something they could afford to offend. They passed through the sandstone castle without any mishaps along the way. Soon, they were out of the sandstone castle's range. Steward Zhang finally heaved a sigh of relief when they reached this point. Not only him, but the young people behind him who were responsible for transporting the goods also heaved sighs of relief. After passing through the sandstone castle, there was another stretch of barren land behind them. Compared to the front, the latter part of the journey was the most difficult for them to travel. Not to mention how bad the environment was, the long period of desolation was not something that ordinary people could endure. After a few hours of travel, they arrived at a barren mountain. The barren mountain looked barren, and there was no sign of life at all. On the barren mountain, there were gusts of chilly wind. Gravel was scattered everywhere, and the strong wind stirred up gusts of sand that filled the sky. Steward Zhang was walking at the front. When he saw the weather, he couldn't help but frown. Of all the times, the wind just had to come at this time. He sighed to himself as his eyes were filled with hesitation. The weather is changing too quickly, and there are too many gravel in front. It's not safe to pass through like this. A young man beside Steward Zhang reminded him. This place is not safe. Steward Zhang looked at the flying yellow sand in front of him with a grave expression. However, when he turned around and looked at the vague shadow of the sandstone castle city gate, he shook his head. This place is too close to the sandstone castle. It's not safe to stay here. But, although there's no problem for us to walk on the road ahead, this thing, the young man behind Steward Zhang spoke again. He looked at the goods on the spirit beast worriedly. As he had mentioned, the situation ahead was not a threat to martial dominator realm experts like them. However, it was hard to say for the goods on the spirit beast. Once there was a problem with the goods, even if they successfully reached the sandstone castle, they would be deducted a lot of money. Moreover, no one in the fifth caravan had encountered such a situation before. All right, 10 of you will rest here. The rest of you will be on guard. It's good to take turns to rest for a while. Let's continue after the wind passes. Steward Zhang frowned and hesitated for a while. Finally, he made up his mind and spoke. When he spoke about being on guard, he especially looked at the young man behind Fang Yu. His meaning was obvious. He wanted Steward Zhang to be careful of Fang Yu. Fang Yu was already used to it. He sat at the side and closed his eyes to rest. It was good to travel with the caravan. There was nothing to worry about. After Steward Zhang gave the instructions to the people around him, he walked to the front near the sandstone castle. His eyes were solemn and vigilant. Here you go. Fang Yu was lying down when the young man beside him, who had been watching him, walked over and handed Fang Yu a spiritual herb. This spiritual herb was not of a very high grade. It could be considered a medium-grade spiritual herb. The road ahead is still long. This thing can replenish your spiritual qi. The young man said slowly. Chapter 643. As he spoke, he had already stuffed the spiritual grass into Fang Yu's hands. He then sat down next to Fang Yu with a vigilant expression. This surprised Fang Yu a little. Throughout the journey, apart from Steward Zhang, Fang Yu had not heard them speak a single word. Fang Yu could not react in time when he suddenly spoke. Fang Yu held the spiritual herb in his hand and swallowed it after looking at it. A spiritual herb of this grade was not very useful to Fang Yu. At most, it had a slight effect on condensing the spiritual energy in his energy reserve. However, this was the young man's good intention after all. Moreover, this was the first time he had spoken, so Fang Yu could not reject him. After swallowing the spiritual herb, Fang Yu looked at the young man and asked, "How long have you been in the 5th caravan?" Fang Yu was very direct, as if he was chatting with an ordinary friend. However, the young man did not say a word. If he hadn't said those words earlier, Fang Yu would have thought that he was a mute. The scene quieted down, and Fang Yu began to feel a little bored. "Brother, our caravan has its rules. Without Steward Zhang's permission, they will not speak a single word to anyone." After a while, the young man who had been standing behind Steward Zhang walked over slowly. He smiled and sat beside Fang Yu. Fang Yu did not know who this guy was, but he could tell that he had a high status in the caravan and had a say in it. He was the one who had suggested to stop and rest. Compared to the others, he was more casual. He sat beside Fang Yu and chatted casually. During the conversation, Fang Yu learned that this guy was called Yi Changxing and was Steward Zhang's disciple. He had followed Steward Zhang to transport goods since he was young. Previously, they were active in a few cities in Shire State. Later, the 5th caravan dropped to Qiushi City. They had stayed there for more than 20 years. Previously, Qiushi City and distant Star City's missions were endless. They had almost no time to rest. However, recently, the relationship between Shire and Ethereal had broken down, which affected their business. If it weren't for the fact that it was almost the new year and there was no income coming in, Steward Zhang would never agree to take Fang Yu on this trip. After chatting for a while, Fang Yu finally understood. It turned out that their Chamber of Commerce didn't have any remuneration. Every caravan had to raise its own men and horses. The number of people in each caravan was not fixed. Some were strong and had more money, so they had more caravans and earned more money. Their 5th caravan was in a tight spot. There were only a dozen or so caravans, and each caravan only had slightly more than 20 people. After all, this area was not very rich. The 4th caravan, which was close to the 5th caravan, was obviously much richer. There were more than 40 teams in total. Every team had at least 30 people. The reason for such a big gap was not only because of their geographical location, but also because they often took on private jobs. The so-called private jobs were for people like Fang Yu, who took on jobs along the way. It was obvious that Steward Zhang was in a tight spot this time. After all, he had to support so many people. According to Yi Changxing, not only were they not paid for working for the Chamber of Commerce, but they also had to pay a certain amount of remuneration every year. Only by doing this could they be protected by the Chamber of Commerce. To put it bluntly, it was equivalent to spending money to buy a spot and borrowing the Chamber of Commerce's reputation and power to do things. If it were a rich person, they could also spend money to buy a spot, recruit their own team, and pay on time. Of course, the Chamber of Commerce didn't completely ignore it. They would still allocate places for the teams to work. If the teams were in trouble, there would still be experts who would come to help. On the surface, the Chamber of Commerce seemed to be doing well. In reality, there was nothing to be proud of. Not only did they have to spend money, but they also had to be restrained by others. However, in this world, they had no choice but to do so. Before Steward Zhang joined the Chamber of Commerce, he had his own escort agency. Unfortunately, in this place where the major sects and powers were complicated, it was impossible for an escort agency to continue operating without enough power. With every batch of goods, there would be people fighting over them. There were even people who risked their lives to kill and rob. In the end, Steward Zhang had no choice but to lead his men to join the Chamber of Commerce. Although they had to spend some money, They relied on the Chamber of Commerce's reputation to live a peaceful life and earn a lot of money. Now, Steward Zhang was the leader of this team. The men under him were all personally trained by him. Hence, they were all elites and had strict rules. Fang Yu sat at the side and listened to Yi Chongxing's conversation. Gradually, he didn't feel bored. After a long time, Yi Chongxing started to talk. He began to tell Fang Yu about what had happened during their journey, including the martial honorable that they had killed earlier than them. When he saw this, he felt a little conflicted about this kind of boring escort mission. After all, it was a long journey, facing a desolate land with no one to talk to. It was a little uncomfortable. Yi Chongxing talked about all sorts of things. Fang Yu thought for a while and asked a key question. How much do you get for escorting this trip? 100 crystals. Not a lot. Yi Chongxing said slowly. It'll take 2 to 3 months to transport them back and forth. Even if we split the profits, we'll only get a few crystals for each of us. If they are lucky, they can earn dozens of crystals without rest for a year. If they are unlucky, just like this year, they only made this trip now. After saying that, he looked a little helpless. He lay on the ground and continued, It's just a few crystals. Everyone has to risk their lives for it. It's not worth it. That's true. Fang Yu nodded. Compared to them, he was considered lucky. After all, he earned 10,000 crystals for a peerless elixir. If you have money, who would be willing to do this? Living in the open. Yi Chongxing sighed and said, My biggest wish now is to increase my strength as soon as possible. When that time comes, I won't let Master out. I hope so. Fang Yu nodded. The two of them had the same goal. Both of them wanted to earn crystals. Their ultimate goal was also to increase their strength. Behind them, the flying yellow sand still showed no signs of weakening. The wind was still raging. Yi Chongxing frowned. The weather around the sandstone castle is getting worse and worse. After saying that, he closed his eyes and rested. The night passed quickly. Just like that, the night passed peacefully. The next day, the sky was slightly brighter and the wind gradually showed signs of subsiding. Another hour later, the gale had already gradually stopped. The sandstorm that filled the sky also gradually stopped. The overcast sky also returned to normal. Chapter 644. We can continue our journey. At this moment, Housekeeper Zhang finally let down his guard. He glanced at the sandstone castle behind him with a strange look in his eyes. After a day of bloodshed, the castle had quieted down. The sudden silence was a little unsettling. Seeing that the wind and sand had gradually dispersed, Housekeeper Zhang hurriedly urged the group to continue. The group returned to its original state. However, after a night, the young man behind him who was looking at Fang Yu no longer looked so wary. After all, his conversation with Yi Chongxing had been overheard. From their conversation, he already knew that Fang Yu was a rich man. For someone like Fang Yu, this batch of goods naturally did not interest him. After passing through the sandstone castle, they would arrive at Shire in less than 2 months. On this journey, other than the thrilling sandstone castle, there was no other dangerous place. Fang Yu walked at the back of the group and muttered to himself. Suddenly, an aura swept over from the sandstone castle behind them. The aura was very violent and seemed to have a clear target. It was coming towards the group of merchants. Stop! Be alert! The moment he sensed this aura, Housekeeper Zhang naturally sensed it. He hurriedly roared and stood in front of the goods, shielding them behind him. Yi Chongxing and the rest of the young men were also on guard at this moment. Shiny swords appeared in their hands. This was not the first time they had encountered such a situation. However, they were all sneaky like Fang Yu. The only person who dared to sweep over so openly like this was the Martial Venerable from last time. Of course, this was the Sandstone Castle. It was unexpected that there would be such a bold person, but it was also reasonable. After this aura swept over this piece of land, it stopped and enveloped this space. Its target was obvious. It was coming directly for the group of merchants. "Who are you? Stop immediately, or else." Housekeeper Zhang was after all very experienced. In the face of this obviously unfriendly aura, he did not hold back and directly warned. Zing zing zing. After a while, what responded to Housekeeper Zhang was a few extremely violent sword qi. 3 streaks of sword qi came straight at Housekeeper Zhang's throat, which was his vital point. "Be careful!" Yi Chongqing roared. Just as he was about to draw his sword, Housekeeper Zhang had already moved. Boom! He waved his fists and also exploded with a powerful aura. It collided with the 2 streams of sword qi and produced a loud boom. After the sound, Steward Zhang was directly pushed back several steps by this aura. After a while, he slowly came to a stop. This sword qi came from an expert. Even without Fang Yu's reminder, Steward Zhang had already reacted. "Alert!" Yi Chongqing spoke again. The rest of the youngsters, with Housekeeper Zhang as the center, instantly surrounded the goods behind him. A moment later, a few figures slowly walked out from the sandcastle not far away. "It's the people from the sandstone castle." Yi Chongqing frowned, his eyes fixed on a young man behind the group of people. That person was the one who had been staring at their caravan when they passed by the sandstone castle. He had originally thought that this kid did not have any other intentions, but who would have thought that he actually had designs on the caravan? "Everyone! We are just a caravan that is escorting worthless goods. We have no enmity with you. What is the meaning of this?" Steward Zhang took a step forward and stared at the group of people in front of him with a serious expression. "A caravan that is escorting worthless goods? I don't think so. We have heard of the reputation of your caravan. If it is not something important, why would we ask your caravan to escort it? You are really good at playing dumb." "Ah." On the opposite side, a middle-aged man among the group of people who had come out of the sandcastle snorted coldly. He stared at the goods behind Steward Zhang with a greedy look in his eyes. Steward Zhang shook his head helplessly when he heard this. It was obviously impossible to reason with these people. These guys' purpose was obvious. They were after the goods behind them. Judging from their attitude, they were determined to get it. "Everyone, we don't want to fight with you. It is not easy to deliver some goods. We want to earn some money. I hope you can make it easy for us." Steward Zhang's expression was serious. He could tell that these people were not weak. If they really fought, there would be casualties. It was not worth risking their lives for such a small amount of goods. They had already lost one of their men when they fought against a martial venerable the last time. "Ha ha ha ha! Did I hear you wrong? Make it easy for you? Then what are we going to eat?" After a while, the middle-aged man standing on the opposite side laughed loudly. He looked at Steward Zhang as if he was looking at an idiot. "It seems that you have to fight today?" Hearing this, Steward Zhang didn't waste any more words. His body suddenly exploded with a violent aura. "You are not stupid." The middle-aged man on the opposite side snorted coldly. A similar aura erupted from his body. "Aren't you afraid that the Chamber of Commerce will hold you accountable?" Yi Chongqing also snorted coldly and asked, "Hold us accountable? If we were afraid, we would not be in this sandcastle." Yi Chongqing's words had barely left his mouth when his entire body moved. The middle-aged man on the opposite side was still smiling and was not vigilant. He was shocked when he suddenly saw him attack. However, the middle-aged man was not weak either. He was at the peak of the martial venerable realm and was almost at the martial venerable realm. Therefore, his reaction speed was extremely fast. The moment Yi Chongqing attacked with the long sword in his hand, he disappeared on the spot. After a loud shout, a powerful aura erupted from his fists. Then, He changed the finger-guessing game into a palm and slashed horizontally at Yi Changxing. A dazzling light, accompanied by a violent aura, was aimed at Yi Changxing's throat. His strength was slightly higher than Yi Changxing's. His speed was also completely above Yi Changxing's. Changxing, Steward Zhang hurriedly roared. He wanted to attack, but it was too late. Even Fang Yu's heart tightened. At this speed, Yi Changxing could not react at all. He was the first to attack. It was too late for him to withdraw now. However, Yi Changxing had no intention of dodging. The long sword in his hand was aimed straight at the violent fist wind on the middle-aged man's fists. The sword aura in Yi Changxing's hand suddenly strengthened at this moment. How is this possible? The middle-aged man's expression changed slightly. Yi Changxing's strength was beyond his imagination. He originally thought that the sword aura was not very strong, so he had the courage to take it with his fists. But when it was in front of him, he realized that this force was too strong. Chapter 645. At this moment, it was too late for the middle-aged man to retract his fists. Boom! After a dull sound, the violent sword qi in Yi Changxing's hand cut off the wind from the middle-aged man's fists. Not only that, but Yi Changxing also changed the direction of his sword in midair. The sword was shining with a cold light as it stabbed straight at the middle-aged man's throat. This attack contained a surge of pure spiritual energy. It seemed that this was Yi Changxing's full-strength attack. Yi Changxing was not the kind of person to let his guard down. The moment the sword qi was released, he mobilized the vital energy in his dantian and condensed it all over his body, guarding against the middle-aged man's sudden attack. Fang Yu stood at the side and watched the battle with a serious expression. There was a world of difference between a martial emperor and a martial king, both in terms of strength and realm. The sword qi that Fang Yu saw was only visible to the naked eye. The aura was also changing rapidly. At this moment, only the middle-aged man, who was closest to Yi Changxing's sword qi, could sense how terrifying it was. This was how a battle between the strong was. A battle was also changing rapidly. There was no absolute suppression, only unexpected accidents. Boom, boom, boom. Although they were so close to each other, they were still peak martial emperors. The middle-aged man was not to be trifled with. He mobilized the violent energy in his body and directly faced Yi Changxing's cold sword qi. After a series of dull sounds, the two of them were both blasted away by a strong force. The moment they fell to the ground, Yi Changxing did not stay idle. He suddenly threw an extremely small dart in his hand. The dart contained the pure vital energy in his body. A sneak attack. This move did not look like a man's move. However, it was often the most effective in a battle of life and death. Almost no one could dodge it easily. This was the only way to take the opponent's life when they least expected it. Whoosh, 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 feeling the flying energy in front of him, the middle-aged man forcibly stabilized his body. His pupils constricted, and there was a look of surprise in his eyes. He stared in the direction where the dart came from. At such a close distance, at such a fast speed, it was too late for him to dodge. "No!" the middle-aged man roared. "We're just passing by, nothing else." The middle-aged man roared with fear in his eyes. Just as he was about to open his mouth to explain something, an ice-cold feeling pierced through his throat. "I'm sorry. Are you done?" Yi Changxing's cold voice rang in his ears. Bam! The middle-aged man's figure fell to the ground with a loud bang. Hissed, at the same time, Fang Yu, who had been watching from the side, also gasped. Yi Changxing's move was simply too fast. Like a ghost, he caught everyone off guard. Fang Yu was certain. If that middle-aged man had been replaced by Fang Yu, the one who would have fallen now would definitely have been Fang Yu. An expert at the peak of the martial emperor realm was indeed terrifying. An expert at the peak of the martial emperor realm. In the blink of an eye, he fell into a pool of blood. Fang Yu wasn't the only one who saw this scene. When the people behind the middle-aged man saw this, their faces were also filled with disbelief. They were all standing where they were. He was dumbfounded. That middle-aged man was one of the strongest people in the Sandstone Castle. Not to mention ruling over the Sandstone Castle, at least he could do whatever he wanted in the Sandstone Castle. Moreover, he had killed countless people in the Sandstone Castle. Who knew how many people had died in his hands? After this kind of battle, he had become extremely powerful. Even so, he had lost to Yi Chongqing in a few breaths' time. This kind of shock was self-evident. At this moment, these people's faces were already filled with incomparable fear. The middle-aged man was so strong, but he couldn't even withstand a single blow from Yi Chongqing's sword. Their strength couldn't compare to the middle-aged man at all. The fear on these people's faces had completely replaced their previous calmness. "Brother, we were all forced by this guy. We didn't mean to rob your caravan. Let us live. He forced us to come, it has nothing to do with us." Behind the middle-aged man, a young man looked at Yi Chongqing with a face full of fear and began to plead. "Sai, forget it. Let them go." Housekeeper Zhang shook his head, indicating that Yi Chongqing should stop here. After all, they would have to walk on this road often in the future. If they could avoid offending people, they would try not to. It was better to have one more friend than one more enemy. "Thank you, Senior, thank you." The group of people behind were full of joy, as if they were relieved. "Fine, since you have no enmity with us, I won't make things difficult for you." Hearing Housekeeper Zhang's words, Yi Chongqing didn't hold back anymore. He slowly withdrew his sword chi, then said to the crowd, "I'll let you go this time." After saying that, he turned around. "Thank you for not killing us, hero." The few of them hurriedly bowed, turned around, and fled without looking back. However, at this moment, the sharp sword chi in Yi Chongqing's hand instantly shot out again. Whoosh, 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 waves of violent sword chi suddenly danced in the air. In mid-air, hundreds of densely packed sword blades instantly condensed. The sword blades were like dense raindrops, pouring down in torrents. The target was the few people who were fleeing in panic. Poochie, a series of sounds rang out incessantly. In this space, a pungent smell of blood suddenly filled the air. The few people who were only focused on fleeing in panic didn't expect Yi Chongqing to do this at all. They were completely unprepared. After they all fell to the ground and stopped breathing, Yi Chongqing's voice slowly floated over. "I said I'll let you go this time. I didn't say I'll make things easy for you. After all, when I asked you to make things easy for me, you didn't agree." Yi Chongqing's words were heavy and powerful. These words didn't seem like they were meant for the few people who were already dead. Instead, it seemed like a warning to some people. As expected, when Yi Chongqing's words slowly fell, Fang Yu instantly felt that not far away, the few auras instantly disappeared. They were probably the people who didn't care about their lives in the Sandstone Castle. This time, they weren't just here to watch the show. Once the middle-aged man and the others succeeded, they would even swarm over to fight for it. At this time, they were all scared away by Yi Chongqing's words. "Kill the chicken to warn the monkey." Although Yi Chongqing's method was a little cruel, it was understandable. After all, those people hiding in the dark didn't have good intentions. Fang Yu liked Yi Chongqing's way of doing things. Compared to him, it was very similar. Straightforward, decisive, resolute. This was how it should be. Chapter 646. Since Yi Chongqing had entered this line of work, he still had a long way to go in the future. The people he met were all kinds of people. Therefore, he had to have such a ruthless method. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to survive in the caravan. This was what Yi Chongqing and Fang Yu had talked about when they were chatting. It was because of this that the two of them had a very congenial conversation. Chongqing, why do you have to do this? Butler Zhang coldly watched Yi Chongqing make a move. Although he was not satisfied, he did not stop him. After seeing those people fall to the ground and stop breathing, he sighed and asked, Master, now that the world has changed, people's hearts are fearful. Yi Chongqing was also somewhat helpless. Putting away the cold sword blade, he explained, if I don't kill them today, that Sandstone Castle's rascal will definitely think that our Chamber of Commerce is easy to bully. We can be lenient to ordinary people, and try not to offend them if we can make friends. But to these outlaws we have to be cruel. They don't know what gratitude is, and it's impossible for them to repay us. If we don't kill them this time, where will the dignity of our caravan go? Those who are watching will think that we are easy to bully. Yi Chongqing's face was somewhat helpless as he slowly walked back. There was no arrogance on his face. Normally, he listened to Butler Zhang and did not have any ambition. But this time, it could be considered the first time he had disobeyed Butler Zhang. He had his reasons for doing so. In fact, it was not only him. Even if it was Fang Yu, he would do the same. Just as he said, those fugitives did not know what gratitude was. If he did not teach them a lesson this time, they would really dare to come again next time. Hearing Yi Chongqing's words, Butler Zhang did not say much. He only nodded slightly, tacitly agreeing with Yi Chongqing's actions. At this moment, Yi Chongqing's aura slowly withdrew. When his aura erupted just now, Fang Yu could clearly feel that he was very strong. He was even about to surpass Butler Zhang. It was a little frightening. The young people in charge of the transportation also had complicated expressions. Yi Chongqing's way of doing things was too terrifying. Let's hurry up. This place is not very peaceful. There might be people who are not afraid of death. Butler Zhang shook his head, indicating that everyone should continue on their way. The caravan continued to move forward. Behind him, Fang Yu used his perception from time to time. No one was following them from the Sandstone Castle. They were probably frightened by Yi Chongqing's aura. It seemed that they were still afraid of death. Although the road ahead was somewhat desolate and barren, compared to the road behind, it was much more peaceful. Along the way, not to mention people, not even half a spirit beast's shadow could be seen. After all, this place was too desolate and there was no place for spirit beasts to rest. The surroundings were barren, and the speed of the caravan gradually increased. Over a month later, the desolation in front of him gradually receded. In front of his eyes, there were already many sparse shadows of buildings. Up ahead should be Shire's sphere of influence. The city in front of them was the easternmost city of Shire, Quicksand City. The destination of the fifth caravan was Quicksand City. After a few hours of traveling, Fang Yu could clearly feel a strong aura surging as the caravan slowly descended from the mountain. After exiting the foot of the mountain, his body was already surrounded by a strange power. This is the boundary of Shire's territory. Don't move, relax. After passing this, we'll be in Shire. After feeling the power around him, Butler Zhang instructed Fang Yu. Stand behind the caravan and don't make a sound later. Then, Steward Zhang instructed again. Fang Yu nodded and slowly moved to the back of the caravan, lining up at the back of the line. This strange power began to slowly strengthen. The power passed through Fang Yu's body, as if it was doing some kind of inspection on him. After a while, this power slowly receded. Which caravan are you from? After a while, a wave of aura drifted over from not far away. After a while, a few figures blocked the path of the caravan. These people were dressed rather normally. They were all wearing armor. It seemed that they were well trained. These are the guards of Quicksand City's Song family. Not only are they responsible for the safety of the city, but they are also responsible for guarding the boundary. Don't talk nonsense later. Seeing this group of people, the young man who had been looking at Fang Yu leaned over and whispered in Fang Yu's ear. Fang Yu nodded and did not say anything. Sir, we are from the 7th caravan of the 5th caravan. We are responsible for transporting this batch of goods. Shopkeeper Zhang smiled and said to the guards in front of him, "Oh, I know you. I haven't been here for a while." A few of the guards nodded and looked at Manager Zhang. "Yes, recently, business hasn't been very good," Shopkeeper Zhang said with a chuckle. He did not mention Taowu Prefecture. Then, he stuffed a crystal into the guard's hand and said, "Time is of the essence, please make it convenient for me." "Okay." Holding the crystal in his hand, the guard nodded in satisfaction and said, "Go on." After saying that, he did not forget to add, "Recently, Taowu State has not been on good terms with us. You are from Taowu State, so you'd better not expose your identity and don't run around." "Thank you for your reminder, sir." Manager Zhang bowed and waved behind him, saying, "Let's go." The caravan moved forward slowly, and Fang Yu breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that he had snuck in. "Wait." However, before Fang Yu could catch his breath, when he walked to the side of the guard looked up and down at Fang Yu and suddenly stopped him. "It's over. I've been discovered." Fang Yu's heart tightened and he knew it was not good. The spiritual qi in his Dantian Sea of Qi had been slowly circulating, ready to attack at any time. "Brother, you don't look familiar?" The guard looked up and down at Fang Yu, and after a long while, he spoke slowly. In front of the caravan, Yi Changxing hurriedly winked at Fang Yu. Fang Yu was not a fool and naturally understood. He said, "Sir, I just joined the caravan in the first half of the year. I'm just trying to make a living." After saying that, the expression on his face relaxed a lot. "Is that so?" The guard frowned. "That's true, I haven't seen you in the first half of the year." Finally, he nodded and waved his hand, indicating that Fang Yu and the rest should leave. Fang Yu breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the 7th caravan had not been to Sierzu for more than half a year. In half a year, it was not a problem to recruit 1 or 2 new people. After all, they used to come here often, and the people in the caravan were all familiar with them, except for Fang Yu. It was normal for them to be suspicious. But fortunately, Manager Zhang knew the rules. After giving the crystal, the guard did not make things difficult and let them go. Chapter 647. Quicksand City was located at the boundary of the Shire region. The Song family guards who were in charge of guarding this area did not make things difficult for them. Therefore, the rest of the journey was much easier. They followed the main road and entered Quicksand City. Along the way, other than a few guards who came to check, they did not encounter any other obstacles. They seemed to follow the rules and did not obstruct the caravan. When they entered Quicksand City, they were stopped. However, after housekeeper Zhang gritted his teeth and stuffed another crystal into the guard's mouth, the guard did not make things difficult for them. After the caravan slowly entered, a series of shouts suddenly came from behind. "Let go of me, I'm not a spy. I'm not from Shire State, let go of me." A young man was pressed to the ground by a group of guards. His face was full of pain as he kept shouting. "If I say you are, then you are. Stop quibbling. Take him away." The leader of the guards snorted coldly, "We've already caught so many spies like you." After saying that, he ordered the guards to take the young man away. Fang Yu saw it clearly. The group of guards just now were all martial kings. The young man who was called a spy was only in the martial spirit realm. His cultivation was not as high as the guards, but he was here to be a spy. Obviously, it was not possible. Looking at the young man's appearance, he did not look like someone from Shire State. It seemed that he just did not know the rules and did not bribe them. Sure enough, everyone knows to ask for benefits now. Yi Changxing slowly walked to the back of the group and looked at Fang Yu as he said, "Aren't these people afraid of being investigated?" Fang Yu frowned and asked. After all, the family would not allow servants to casually take bribes and accuse people of being spies if they did not give them. Firstly, they were afraid of causing trouble for the family. Secondly, they were afraid that the servants would rebel. Investigate? No one dares to investigate them now. Yi Chongqing shook his head and smiled. Ever since the tension between Shire and Piaomiao, their status has been on the rise. After all, they are responsible for guarding the border of Shire State. No matter where they came from, as long as they left this place, they would probably give them some benefits. Otherwise, they would definitely not let them go so easily. Fang Yu nodded and glanced at the Song family guard. These people's cultivations were not very high. The leader of the guards was only at the peak of the martial emperor realm. As for the group of patrolling guards behind him, they were basically only martial kings. Even so, many people had to be polite when they saw them, especially Steward Zhang, who was even more respectful to them. The caravan gradually entered Quicksand City. In Quicksand City, there was a hubbub of voices, and it was extremely lively. This was the only way to get to the other cities in Shire. It could also be considered a stronghold. People from all over the Shire had to pass through here. The caravans that came in and out, as well as the people that came and went, would all stop at Quicksand City. Therefore, the Song family guard who was guarding this place naturally had a higher status. Almost everyone who came from other places had to make a small fortune. Otherwise, they would end up like the young man just now. He was clearly only a martial spirit, but he was treated as a spy sent by Shire State. At this time, Fang Yu had also roughly sized up Quicksand City. There were no complicated religious forces here. On the main street, people walked one after another. Most of them were businessmen. On the way, they met two other caravans. They were also the caravans of the fifth caravan. However, the two parties did not interact. They just brushed past each other. Other than the caravans, there were a few powerhouses of very high cultivation passing by. However, they all seemed to be in a hurry. It seemed that they also had something to do. Compared to Autumn City, this place was much more prosperous. After all, other than the native Song family, most of the people here were businessmen passing by. The people were complicated and not fixed. Fang Yu originally wanted to leave here, but he was stopped by Yi Chongqing. He shook his head and said to Fang Yu with a serious expression, "The situation here is complicated. There are powerhouses from all over the place. If you move alone, even if the Song family guards don't find you, it's very likely that you'll be targeted by others. Follow the caravan and you'll be safe for now. After handing over the goods, the caravan will cross Quicksand City and rest in another city. You'll be absolutely safe when you leave then." Fang Yu nodded after hearing this. Anyway, they were already in the Shire State. There was no need to be anxious now. With the caravan as a barrier, although there were many people crowded along the way, no one dared to get too close to the caravan. From the entrance of Quicksand City to a dock in the west, there were no accidents on the way. At the dock, there were already many merchant ships waiting. The two caravans of the fifth caravan that they met earlier were delivering goods at the dock. There were also a few powerhouses who were discussing with the people on the ship. Housekeeper Zhang stopped the caravan here. After waiting for a while, a merchant ship slowly approached the shore. The time was just right. They even arrived a little early. Seeing the merchant ship approach the shore, the few young people in charge of the delivery surrounded the merchant ship in a well-trained manner to ensure its safety. The person in charge of receiving the goods was a middle-aged man. This person looked very powerful. Fang Yu actually couldn't see through his realm. He slowly walked out of the merchant ship and looked at the intact goods behind Housekeeper Zhang. He nodded in satisfaction and said, "Housekeeper Zhang, you're early again this time? I just arrived a while ago." Housekeeper Zhang smiled. The middle-aged man grunted in acknowledgement and then waved to the people behind him. A group of people dressed as servants moved the goods from the spirit beasts onto the merchant ship. Then, the middle-aged man handed a handful of crystals to housekeeper Zhang. 100 crystals. 10 extra crystals. Take it as a reward from the shopkeeper. With that, the middle-aged man waved his hand and directly boarded the merchant ship without any intention of staying. The merchant ship gradually left the shore and disappeared completely. Housekeeper Zhang heaved a sigh of relief. The delivery mission this time was considered complete. Where did this person come from? Since there was nothing to do, Fang Yu stood beside Yi Chongxing and asked. He could tell that the middle-aged man was very powerful. And from the looks of it, he was just a handyman. For a handyman to be so powerful, Fang Yu couldn't imagine what kind of family was behind him. This is one of the housekeepers of the Lei family in Tianluo City. He's in charge of contacting us. In the past, whenever the Wang family did business with the Lei family, this guy was in charge of contacting them. Tianluo City? When he heard these words, Fang Yu frowned. Previously, Fang Yu clearly remembered on the map that Desolate City Mountain was behind Tianluo City, less than 20 miles away. And to reach Desolate City Mountain, Tianluo City was the only way. The location of Tianluo City, Fang Yu slowly looked in the direction where the merchant ship had disappeared. Chapter 648. West of the pier. That should be the location of Tianluo City. Unlike on land, there were a lot of intersections. Usually, there was only one direction to travel at the pier. The direction that the merchant ship had just left was the west. Previously, on the map, there were only a few cities near Quicksand City in Shire State. After that, there were no more markings until they reached Desolate City Mountain. As for the specific location, Fang Yu still had not figured it out. Now, the merchant ship had pointed him in the direction. Follow us to the tavern to rest first. It's not safe here. Yi Chongxing looked at Fang Yu's eyes as if he knew that Fang Yu had something important to do. However, it was not a wise choice to act alone here. Fang Yu nodded and followed the merchant ship onto a passenger ship. An hour later, the merchant ship stopped at a small pier. Behind them was a small city. This small city also belonged to Quicksand City. However, because it was too remote, very few people set foot here. Housekeeper Zhang had always been cautious. He naturally had his reasons for choosing this place to rest. When the passenger ship reached the pier, Fang Yu did not disembark. He looked at the position in front of him. It was the position where the merchant ship had just left. In other words, Tianluo City was not far from here. Housekeeper Zhang looked at Fang Yu as if he already knew that Fang Yu had something to do. However, according to the rules, he did not ask. Fang Yu directly handed the 30 crystals to Housekeeper Zhang. After bowing, he bid farewell to Yi Chongxing. Yi Chongxing nodded and did not say anything. The passenger ship gradually left the shore and glided rapidly in this area of the water. The person in charge of steering the ship was a burly man with a full beard. The burly man looked carefree. On the way, he started chatting with Fang Yu. When he found out that Fang Yu was going to Tianluo City, he frowned and said, "Why are you going there alone?" "Why?" Fang Yu could tell that the burly man was implying something, so he asked. "That place is where the major clans store their goods. Normally, people who aren't familiar with their faces won't be allowed to enter." The big man shook his head, looked at Fang Yu and said, "You don't look like someone from any family, do you?" It had to be said that the burly man had seen all kinds of people over the years. He might not be good at other things, but he was quite good at judging people. Fang Yu smiled and did not continue to answer. He was already in a dilemma. Sierre was indeed not a place for ordinary people. Not only were the rules strict, but there were also various great clans. However, since he was already here, he could only force his way into Heaven Luo City. A few hours later, the ship slowly docked at the shore. This was not the pier. The Heaven Luo city's pier was still quite a distance away. The reason why he chose to stop here was because the burly man was unwilling to continue forward. Ahead of them was the dock of Tianluo City, which was guarded by experts from various families. If it wasn't a merchant ship, they wouldn't be allowed to dock. Moreover, Fang Yu was also on the ship. After paying a crystal, Fang Yu jumped down from the ship. This was the outskirts of Heaven Luo City, which was still quite a distance away. Fang Yu quickened his pace, and his figure flashed continuously. After an hour, Fang Yu was already standing on top of a valley outside Heaven Luo City. This was the entrance to Heaven Luo City. However, there were many people busy moving goods there. Around them, there were also many experts' auras sweeping across. It was obvious that this was an empty city. There were not many people living there, and outsiders were not allowed to come close. Desolate City Mountain was behind Heaven Luo City. If one wanted to go to Heaven Luo Mountain, they would have to pass through Heaven Luo City. After thinking about it, Fang Yu did not intend to force his way in. After all, the forces here were complicated. There were many experts from various clans here. If he forced his way in, he would definitely be suppressed by them. Especially that housekeeper from the Lei family, whose strength was unfathomable. If they fought, it would be difficult to escape. However, even if he could not force his way in, it did not mean that there was no chance at all. Fang Yu's gaze landed on those people who were transporting goods. There was still some distance from here to the pier. After a few breaths, Fang Yu had already appeared on their way to deliver goods. He swaggered through the crowd, and no one noticed him. When he reached the pier, he imitated the others and carried the goods. Under the watchful eyes of many experts, he walked towards Heaven Luo City. Everything looked very natural, and no one stopped him. Following the person in front of him, Fang Yu lowered his head and walked carefully. When he was about to reach the gate of Heaven Luo City, an aura suddenly swept across. Fang Yu was very familiar with this aura. It was the Lei family. Fortunately, this aura did not stay on Fang Yu for long and disappeared after a while. Fang Yu relaxed. In front of him was the entrance to Heaven Luo City. At the entrance, Housekeeper Lei and a few other experts were checking around with vigilance. Fang Yu held his breath and planned to bluff his way through. When he passed by the Lei family, he did not react. "Stop right there." He was slightly relieved. Just as he was about to continue moving forward, Housekeeper Lei's voice slowly sounded behind him. Then, the Lei family slowly walked in front of Fang Yu and stared at Fang Yu with a fake smile. He laughed and said, "Aren't you the escort of the 5th caravan? Why is the 5th caravan so responsible? Not only do you deliver goods, but you also help unload them." After he finished speaking, he snorted coldly. "I was wondering why there was an extra person in the 5th caravan. Tell me, what do you want to do in the 5th caravan? I'm just passing by." Fang Yu smiled faintly as he sensed the hostility emanating from Supervisor Lei. He immediately turned around and left. Trying to run? Behind him, the Lei family snorted coldly. In his hand, a force condensed and attacked Fang Yu's head violently. Esoteric. However, the moment he made his move, he suddenly felt the space around him begin to distort. An illusionary figure of a huge chessboard appeared in midair. Under the chessboard, beams of light burst out from the soles of his feet. The Lei family frowned when he was enveloped by the beam of light. His eyes were fixed on the changes in his surroundings. In his eyes there was already a look of horror. However, he was a peak martial emperor expert after all. Compared to the others, he was already considered calm. The aura around him immediately condensed and exploded with a violent force, resisting the beam of light from the chessboard. From afar, his expression was ferocious, as if he had used a significant amount of force. Even so, his body was slowly being devoured by the power of the beam of light, starting from the tip of his toes. In the blink of an eye, The beam of light had already devoured his legs. The Lei family's face sank, and his expression instantly became ferocious. He clasped his hands together and spat out a beam of blood from his mouth. When the beam of blood came into contact with the aura on his hands, a terrifying force exploded from his body. Chapter 649. Break it! Behind him, Lei Guan roared. The lightning-like berserk energy all over his body instantly exploded. The energy gathered into a light spot. After it solidified, it blasted toward the chessboard's light pillar. Rumble, a deafening boom rang out, and the surrounding area shook violently. After a while, the dust settled and the surroundings returned to normal. Lei Guan had used his own energy to break through the chessboard's devouring power. This shocking scene was truly frightening. However, all of this was within Fang Yu's expectations. After all, he had not used his full strength in this attack. He had only done it to buy time. Lei Guan had burned his power of wills and gathered it in his dantian. He had used the power of the blood of concentration to break through the chessboard's devouring power. This power was simply too violent. It was similar to the demon son who had burned his demon blood in the Battle of the 100. However, this Lei Guanjia was a peak martial emperor. The increase in power brought by the burning of his power of wills was not small. However, after a short increase, his power of wills was damaged and his body was weak. However, that was something that would happen in an hour. For now, he could still easily get rid of Fang Yu. Fang Yu was not a fool. When he made his move on the ancient chessboard, he had already thought about it. He would delay Lei Guan and escape immediately. He used the soaring dragon technique. Fang Yu's speed had reached its limit. After a few breaths, he had already rushed out of Tianluo City and entered the dense forest. According to the map, he would reach the foot of the barren city mountain after passing through the dense forest. Behind him, a group of people was flying quickly. The leader was Lei Guan. When he reached the dense forest, he waved his hand and motioned for the people behind him to stop. Lei Guan, are we still going after him? Behind him, a young man looked at the dense forest and asked with a frown. It seems that they are not here for the goods. Lei Guan shook his head and looked at the dense forest with a strange expression. Then, he turned around and looked away from the dense forest. He said, they should be heading for the foot of the barren city mountain. Don't worry about him. Once he's there, he definitely won't be able to return. After he finished speaking, a trace of darkness flashed in his eyes. He did not forcefully stop people like Fang Yu, who had snuck into Heaven Luo City with the intention of going to Desolate City Mountain. After all, that was not a place where ordinary people could go. Since he wanted to die, there was no reason for him to stop him. The group of people immediately dispersed. In the dense forest, Fang Yu's speed gradually slowed down. This place was already close to the foot of Desolate City. The reason why he stopped was because Fang Yu had clearly sensed waves of aura flashing in front of him. These auras were all very powerful. It was definitely not a spirit beast from the forest, but the aura of a powerhouse. Fang Yu frowned. How could there be so many people in this place? Fang Yu muttered to himself as he slowly approached Zhang Xian. At the foot of the mountain, there were hundreds of people scattered around. These people were dressed in all kinds of clothes, and they came from all over the continent. While Fang Yu was sizing them up, they were still staring at the statue in front of them. Behind the statue was the entrance of Desolate City Mountain. Fang Yu furrowed his brows. These people had stopped moving forward. Clearly, it was because they were blocked by the statues. Same old rules. Anyone who can withstand the attack of the intent realm of the statue can all enter Desolate City Mountain. On the statue, there were two figures vaguely standing. These two figures were high up, as if they were looking down on all living things. As they were far away, Fang Yu could not sense their auras. However, judging from their cultivation, These two should be at the peak of the martial royal realm. Below, at the entrance, most of the people standing there were at the martial king realm. These people looked very excited. I don't think I can get through. We'll know when we try. Desolate City Mountain is full of opportunities. If we can get one or two of them, our strength will improve by leaps and bounds. That's right. We spent so much effort to sneak in from Heaven Luo City. How can we give up so easily? The group of people began to discuss in low voices. Their gazes were burning with passion. It seemed that this desolate city mountain not only had a first-class brick kiln, but also had various opportunities. Moreover, these opportunities were definitely not ordinary. Otherwise, there would not be so many people fighting for them. Fang Yu did not know much about Desolate City Mountain. He had only heard from the Pill Saint that the environment here was bad, but he did not mention the so-called opportunities. It seemed that they did not want Fang Yu to waste his time here. However, why were they stopped by two peak martial royal realm experts in Desolate City Mountain, and why did they have to pass the test to enter? Fang Yu furrowed his brows, unable to comprehend the situation. The people below did not seem to have an answer either. They had only come to look for the opportunities in Desolate City Mountain. They had not expected to encounter a barrier here. Moreover, this barrier had been set up by two peak martial royal realm experts. They had no ability to resist. Let's begin. The vague figure on the statue said. He looked at the people below the statue and said coldly. I'll go first. A young man could not wait to rush up. A stream of energy gathered in his body, and then slowly flowed through his body. When his body was covered by the energy, he suddenly hit the statue with his hands. Rumble, with a loud sound, the statue shook slightly. It's done. The young man's face suddenly lit up with joy. Just so. So weak, he said with a smile. Just as he was about to withdraw his hands, his face suddenly became gloomy. Boom! Then, Fang Yu could see a stream of powerful energy coming out of the statue and gathering in the young man's body. The young man was not prepared at all. He was directly smashed into pieces by the violent energy. Blood mist instantly spread out in all directions. What a powerful energy! What was that just now? It's too scary. Behind him, many people were already crying out in surprise. They were all Martial King realm experts. They could clearly feel the energy just now. That was why they were afraid of the strange energy just now. That young man was very strong. He was about to reach the peak of Martial King realm. Even so, under that power, he was still unable to withstand a single blow. Oh right. I forgot to remind you. Anyone who wants to try can come. But if you're not strong enough, you'll end up like that person just now. When the figure on the statue saw the scene below, he seemed to have gotten used to it and said indifferently, Don't worry, it's not a big deal. He had not reminded the people before. Many people began to curse in their hearts. These two people were obviously tricking them. Chapter 650. Unfortunately, both of them were at the peak of the martial royal realm. There was no need for them to work together. Any one of them could easily defeat all of them. Therefore, no one dared to make a sound. After the figure on the statue finished speaking, he continued to ask, Is there anyone else who wants to try? As soon as he said that, the people below immediately became quiet. Let's not try. Our lives are more important. That's right. That guy is stronger than us, but he couldn't even withstand a single blow. Let's disperse. Even if we pass, it's hard to say if we can find the opportunity. There's no need to take such a big risk. Many people had already started to whisper. Without any hesitation, the dozen or so people left the area. As they had said, even if they were in Mount Desolate City, the opportunity was not the grass and trees in the mountain, which could be found everywhere. If they were lucky, they might find it. If they were unlucky, it would be a waste of time. Moreover, it was not worth taking such a big risk. However, the departure of more than a dozen people did not affect the people behind them. Most of them were not afraid of death. One of the middle-aged men was already slowly moving forward. After gathering his aura, he suddenly punched the statue with both of his fists. There was a bloody example of the previous young man. After he punched the power into the statue, he did not let his guard down. On the contrary, the power in his dantian became stronger. Boom! After a few breaths, a powerful force burst out from the statue. The force came unexpectedly. Fortunately, the middle-aged man was already prepared. He channeled all of his strength into his fist. He gritted his teeth and resisted the force. After a while, the force gradually dissipated. The middle-aged man heaved a sigh of relief and withdrew his fist. Good. The two figures on the statue nodded. After the middle-aged man successfully passed, he stood behind the statue with a look of surprise and waited for the people behind him. He was well aware of the rules here. After all of them passed the test, those who could enter Mount Desolate City would be sent in. At this moment, he still needed to wait for the people behind him. Someone had succeeded, which made many people feel more confident. Many people were eager to give it a try. However, after dozens of people passed, only 3 people succeeded. The rest of them, like the first young man, were turned into a bloody mist on the spot. Even though the passing rate was so low, the remaining people still rushed forward. Faced with the opportunity of Desolate City Mountain, he had obviously lost his mind. A few hours later, the remaining dozens of people all went through the test one after another. The scene was extremely bloody. In the end, among the 100 people, other than the few who had already given up, there were only 20 or so who passed. Fang Yu was the last to take the test. Although Xiao Chun did not know why he had to participate in this test, it seemed like he would have to deal with the 2 martial monarchs if he wanted to enter Desolate City Mountain. The power in Fang Yu's dantian qi gathered in his body. Without thinking, he punched the statue with both his fists. Previously, he had already evaluated the power of the statue in his mind. With his strength, he could take it head-on. After all, with the effect of the spirit-congealing pill, the spiritual energy in Fang Yu's qi was incomparably strong. Rumble, when the 2 fists landed on the statue, the entire statue shook violently. The ground beneath his feet seemed to be unable to withstand such a violent force, and it actually began to crack. This shocked Fang Yu a little. It seemed that his physical strength had improved a lot during this period of traveling with the 5th caravan through the barren mountains and turbulent rivers. He was secretly surprised, and naturally, he was also wary of the power of conception in the statue. 3, 2, 1. Fang Yu counted down in his heart. Sure enough, within a few breaths, a hidden force gushed out from the statue. This force instantly entered Fang Yu's body, and it wanted to devour crazily. Fang Yu had experienced this scene once. Therefore, it was easy for him to completely control this force, and then he circulated it to the qi in his dantian without any ripples. Pass. Fang Yu was secretly surprised. However, when he was just about to withdraw his fist, suddenly, a violent aura instantly lingered in Fang Yu's heart. At this time, the power of conception of a martial monarch, how could it be? Fang Yu opened his eyes wide, and his eyes were full of disbelief. This power of conception came very suddenly. Fang Yu was unprepared and did not react at all, and it directly entered his body at lightning speed. The power instantly began to flow wildly in his body, and everywhere it passed, there was a burning pain. How could this be? Fang Yu was shocked. He was careless. He originally thought that after the power in the statue disappeared, he would pass the test. This was indeed the case. Those who had passed previously only endured a wave of power. When it came to him, this inexplicable and sudden power of conception obviously caught him off guard. In the blink of an eye, the power had already circulated around Fang Yu's body, and then, at lightning speed, it directly bombarded his qi. It's over. Fang Yu's heart sank. This power entered his qi, and it would instantly shatter his qi. If he was lucky, he could survive, but he would become a cripple. If he was unlucky, he would directly turn into a bloody mist like the people before him. He had encountered this situation before. However, last time, he was lucky enough to communicate with the power of the throne of sin. The power of the throne of sin forcefully swallowed the power of conception. This time, it was too late to communicate with the throne of sin. Boom! Fang Yu only felt a muffled sound in his dantian. Then, a heart-wrenching feeling swept through his entire body. The qi in his dantian was suddenly bombarded by that power. In an instant, it exploded in his body and shattered into pieces. Puchi, a column of blood spurted out, and Fang Yu's entire body swayed. After a long while, he forcefully stabilized his body. Taking a deep breath and enduring the intense pain, Fang Yu tried to communicate with the qi in his dantian. Fortunately, his qi was not completely shattered. However, the bombardment of the power of conception just now had seriously injured him. Originally, he was a 4-star martial king, but now, his strength was greatly reduced. Even people at the peak of martial spirit realm were very likely to fight with him. Compared to the damage of the power of the realm, what gave Fang Yu the most headache was the injury to his soul. The power of the soul was the foundation of cultivation. Once the power of the soul was seriously injured, it would bring irreversible damage to the cultivation. Fang Yu stabilized his body and quickly exchanged for a purple xian flower from the crystal store. He no longer had the energy to refine the peerless pill to concentrate, so he could only directly swallow the purple xian flower. At this time, it was no longer the time to feel sorry for the crystals. The power of the purple xian flower slowly spread throughout his body, repairing part of his meridians that had been severely injured. The repair process was relatively fast. After all, the purple xian flower was not an ordinary thing. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.